Chapter 31:31. An arrow. What's the plan? Mai Shu asked Jiang Yi with a glimmer of hope in her beautiful eyes. The reason why these devil apes are attacking us crazily and cooperating so well is mainly because the leader is commanding them from behind. As long as we can find the leader and kill it, the group of devil apes will fall into chaos and will have a chance to break out. Unfortunately, it's almost impossible. The leader is too far away from us and there's a group of devil apes between us. Jiang Yi shook his head and smiled bitterly. If he went all out, there was a high chance that he could get close to the leader, but he wasn't confident that he could kill it. The leader of the devil apes was a terrifying existence at the peak of the creation realm. Even if Jiang Yi was at the peak of the creation realm and in an environment where there was no lack of heavenly Tao energy, it would still be difficult to kill it. Needless to say, in an environment like Death Canyon where heavenly Tao energy was even more scarce, Jiang Yi would probably be exhausted after trying so hard to get close to the leader of the devil apes. Facing the leader of the devil apes would only result in his defeat. Mai Shu also realized that Jiang Yi's plan was too difficult. Her beautiful eyes drooped and she smiled bitterly. "Uncle Jiang, are we going to die here today?" Jiang Yi was silent. In his opinion, this was inevitable. There were too many devil apes around them and their cavalry had almost reached their limit. The enemy was strong and they were weak. The final result was self-evident. Fart, fart, fart. Suddenly, shrill screams came from the front. The devil apes blocking their way had gone crazy and they charged into the cavalry, almost risking their lives to injure them. Instantly, the cavalry's casualties increased. Many of them didn't even have time to react before they were torn to pieces by the devil ape's ferocious claws. For a moment, the cavalry began to retreat. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The devil apes that had been surrounding them came forward and completely surrounded Mai Shu, Jiang Yi, and the others. Jiang Yi, Mai Shu, and the others were all pale and their eyes were filled with despair. Roar. Hanging above the cliff, the demon ape leader's scarlet eyes erupted with a cruel bloody light. It raised its head and howled. Its voice was distant and long, and it even contained a ghostly mournfulness and strangeness. Under the howl of the devil ape leader, all the devil apes in the canyon roared towards the sky, as if they were celebrating their impending victory. Poochie. However, the demonic ape leader's howl only lasted for a short while before its majestic howl turned into a blood-curdling scream. A streak of blood-red light streaked across the sky and slammed into the ape leader's chest. It sent the ape leader flying and embedded itself into the wall behind it. Pained cries continuously rang out. The group of devil apes that had been roaring in unison stopped as if they had been slapped in the face. They stared dumbfoundedly at the devil ape leader that had let out a miserable cry. At the top of the canyon, the chest of the devilish ape leader had been pierced by a blood arrow, and it was nailed to the wall. The devilish ape leader continued to struggle, but it couldn't get rid of the blood arrow. It could only passively hang on the canyon wall like a clown for everyone to watch. Mai Shu, Jiang Yi, and the others were also stunned. They originally thought that the devil ape leader had issued a final order for the group of devil apes to launch an all-out attack and completely annihilate them. They didn't expect that such an unforeseen event would occur. "What the hell are you roaring for? You're so annoying. I can endure it if you're the only one roaring. Why did you order all the devil apes to roar with you? Are you trying to break my eardrums?" A somewhat impatient voice was transmitted over. The originally stunned group of people and the group of devil apes discovered that a tall figure had walked out from the shadows of the rock wall a few hundred meters in front of them. It was a young man with a calm expression, holding a blood-red longbow in his left hand. This person was Zhuowen. Originally, he didn't want to meddle in other people's business and planned to go deeper into the Death Canyon. After all, most of the devil apes were attracted by Jiang Yi and the others, which created an opportunity for Zhuowen. However, the devilish ape leader secretly summoned other devil apes to guard the entrance to the depths of the Death Canyon, eyeing Zhuowen covetously. He knew that the devilish ape leader had no intention of letting him go. He was afraid that after Jiang Yi and the others were killed, he would immediately be besieged by these devil apes. Since they would have to fight sooner or later, Zhuowen thought that it would be better to take the initiative and get rid of the devilish ape leader first. Therefore, he took out the Huyi divine bow immediately. The strength of this devilish ape leader was indeed terrifying. It should have the battle strength of a peak creation realm expert. Zhuowen didn't dare to be careless, so he took out the Huyi divine arrow and shot it at the devilish ape leader. At that time, the devilish ape leader was howling towards the sky and didn't pay attention to Zhuowen at all. Therefore, it was directly pierced by the arrow. Logically speaking, with the power of the Huyi divine arrow, this arrow should have been able to completely tear the devilish ape leader apart. However, the result was that although the devilish ape leader was seriously injured, it actually didn't die. The power of the Huyi divine arrow has been greatly weakened in the Death Canyon. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. He knew that it wasn't that the devilish ape leader was tough, but that the power of the Huyi divine arrow had been weakened. If they were in the outside world, the devilish ape leader would have died long ago. There wouldn't be any room for struggle. Roar. The devilish ape leader roared furiously and stared at Zhuowen, as if it wanted to tear Zhuowen apart with its gaze. After the devilish ape leader roared, the group of devilish apes, who were originally in a daze, immediately moved. All the devil apes present rushed towards Zhuowen as if they had gone mad. Even the devilish apes that were blocking in front of the cavalrymen directly abandoned the cavalrymen and rushed towards Zhuowen. Jiang Yi, Mai Shu and the others were stunned. They didn't expect the situation to develop to this point. The devilish apes actually abandoned them just like that. Miss, this is a good opportunity. Let's go. Jiang Yi recovered from his shock and revealed an ecstatic expression. He hurriedly pulled Mai Shu and led the rest of the cavalrymen to escape towards the entrance of the canyon. Uncle Jiang, what about that person? Mai Shu turned around and looked at the figure that was surrounded by countless devilish apes and couldn't help but ask. Miss, don't worry about him. This is our best chance to escape. That person is dead. We can't save him. Jiang Yi glanced at Zhuowen with a complicated expression. He naturally guessed Mai Shu's meaning and said in a deep voice. Mai Shu revealed a trace of pity, but she didn't say anything and remained silent. What Jiang Yi said was true. The cavalrymen of the Divine City were no match for the devilish apes. Chapter 31-32. Siege Roar. Roar. The ferocious roars of the devil apes came from all directions, shaking one's eardrums and sounding extremely harsh. Zhuowen stood alone in the same place, his body ramrod straight, like a towering banner that would never fall. Are you trying to suppress me with numbers? Zhuowen licked his lips. He looked around at the endless stream of devil apes, his eyes full of fighting spirit. A terrifying aura that could shake the heavens and earth surged out of his body. From afar, one could see that Zhuowen's entire body was emitting a crystal-clear light that flickered like a crystal. At this moment, Zhuowen did not hold back. He completely unleashed the power of his late-stage 6-star Pangu sacred body. These devil apes were not simple. Each of them had the strength of a creator. The leader of the devil apes was even stronger. It was a terrifying existence at the peak of the creator realm. Zhuowen did not dare to only use the King Devourer bloodline to face the enemy. That was simply courting death. Puff. Zhuowen's right palm suddenly reached forward and grabbed the head of the devil ape that was charging at the front. He squeezed it hard, and a terrifying power erupted. The devil ape did not even have the chance to scream before its head was crushed by Zhuowen. It died instantly. Swoosh. Swoosh. The moment Zhuowen squeezed the devil ape to death, 7 or 8 devil apes immediately attacked Zhuowen from all directions. However, the moment the attacks landed on Zhuowen's body, a strange space-time distortion energy appeared. The attacks of the 7 to 8 devil apes immediately stopped. Their scarlet eyes were filled with confusion. They did not understand why their attacks could not be launched. They stopped in mid-air. Destiny space-time kill. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. The space-time distortion power around his body was suddenly filled with blazing purple light. Next, the power of space-time distortion continued to evolve, eventually transforming into a vast, boundlessly surging purple river. This purple river contained a mysterious power that could defy fate. The purple river swept out and the 8 devil apes were immediately swept away. When the devil apes reappeared, they seemed to have fainted and fell to the ground in the distance. Their auras had completely disappeared. The strange thing was that these demonic apes didn't have any injuries on their bodies, but they died just like that. Whoosh, whoosh. The purple river became more and more turbulent, circling around Zhuoan like a huge piece of purple silk, dancing in the air in a circular posture. All of the devilish apes that pounced on him were swept away by the purple river and disappeared without a trace. The wheel of fate of these devil apes had been destroyed by the fate spacetime annihilation. Without fate, their souls had dissipated. There was no difference between being alive and being dead. Zhuoan's face was incomparably pale. This destiny spacetime kill sacred art had a terrifying consumption of energy. Moreover, he was in this harsh environment of Death Canyon. The heavenly Tao energy in his body was being consumed at an extremely fast rate. Therefore, the moment he used destiny spacetime annihilation, he took out piles of supreme-grade heavenly Tao origin crystals from the macro world and absorbed the heavenly Tao energy in them like a whale sucking in water. At this moment, Zhuoan was in the center of the purple river. He slowly raised his head and looked at the devil ape leader pinned to the rock wall by Hu Yi's divine arrow. His eyes revealed a trace of coldness. He slowly stepped forward and walked toward the devil ape leader. The terrifying purple river continued to expand and spread around him. Moreover, extremely terrifying purple waves surged within the purple river. Every wave could sweep away a devil ape that got close, completely strangling it to death. However, the surrounding devil apes didn't know fear. They continued to rush forward one after another, wanting to completely kill Zhuoan. Unfortunately, the devil apes couldn't break the defensive range of destiny spacetime annihilation at all. Uncle Jiang. Look, that young man. Among the cavalrymen of the divine city, Mai Shu's cute ears twitched. She couldn't help but turn her head to look at Zhuoan. She saw a scene that she would never forget for the rest of her life. The young man, who they thought would die without a doubt, was now surrounded by a raging purple river. Countless devil apes around were swept away after rushing into the purple river. They fell to the ground with their bodies intact, but their auras were completely gone. They were completely dead. The young man, on the other hand, was like a demon god. He slowly walked through the crowd of devil apes, safe and sound. On the other hand, the devil apes that wanted to harm him were all dead. What a powerful divine ability! This young man is not simple. Jiang Yi also stopped and looked at Zhuoan. His eyes couldn't help but widen. However, Jiang Yi soon revealed a puzzled look and muttered to himself, such a powerful divine ability must consume a lot of heavenly Tao energy. This young man won't be able to last long. The end result will be the same. He won't be able to last long. Mai Shu's beautiful eyes flickered. She gritted her teeth and said, Uncle Jiang, we were able to escape because of this young man. How about, we go and help him? Jiang Yi shook his head and said, Miss, we are not completely out of danger yet. If we go and help him, I'm afraid we will die here together with him. Let's go now. Mai Shu couldn't bear it. She said with tears in her beautiful eyes, Uncle Jiang, if it weren't for this young man, we wouldn't have been able to escape. Now he is trapped in the devil apes. Are we just going to watch him die? Jiang Yi sighed and said, Miss, we are in a terrible state now. What can we do if we go? We will only be sending ourselves to death. Uncle Jiang, I'm not sending you to your death. I'm going in this time. Don't follow me. Mai Shu was silent for a while. Suddenly, her 3 pure white tails emitted a faint light. Then, Mai Shu disappeared from the spot as if she had teleported. When she reappeared, she was already in the midst of the devil apes. Soul Raid. Miss, you, Jiang Yi's expression changed when he saw Mai Shu teleport into the midst of the devil apes. Soul Raid was the innate divine ability of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan. Those who truly possessed the bloodline of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan could instantly release their soul. The soul was formless and intangible like a phantom. It could not be touched or captured. Moreover, it could move faster than the speed of sound and break through any obstacles. The more tails a nine-tailed fox had, the more times they could release their soul. The maximum number of times they could release their soul was 9 times. My Shu possessed the powerful bloodline of the nine-tailed fox clan. Naturally, she possessed such a powerful innate divine ability. However, My Shu's cultivation was not high. She had only grown 3 tails, so she could only use Soul Raid 3 times. Moreover, after using it 3 times, My Shu would be exhausted and unable to move. She would need to recuperate for a long time to recover. Chapter 31-33. My Shujuan was very satisfied with the power of the Destiny Spacetime Slash. This was a divine ability that he had created by combining the power of destiny and spacetime. It was a divine ability that was tailor-made for him. This divine ability would become stronger as his strength increased. The current power of the Destiny Spacetime Slash was enough to instantly kill any expert below the level of the Creation Realm. Even a Creation Realm expert would be severely injured if they were hit by the Destiny Spacetime Slash head-on. Zhuoan walked slowly, the purple river circling around him like a terrifying purple vortex. With every step he took, many devil apes fell to the terrifying power of the purple river. Of course, the price Zhuoan had to pay for using the Destiny Spacetime Slash was huge. He had to consume piles of heavenly Tao origin crystals. Although the Great World had a large reserve of supreme-grade heavenly Tao origin crystals, it couldn't support his crazy consumption. He had estimated that if he continued to consume heavenly Tao origin crystals at this rate, the Great World's reserves wouldn't last for more than a few years. Fortunately, this was only temporary. If it had been for a long time, he really wouldn't have been able to afford it. Zhuoan frowned. He saw a familiar figure in front of the purple river. It was a young girl in the prime of her youth. The young girl's appearance was almost identical to that of a human girl. Moreover, her features were exquisite, like a porcelain doll. The only difference was that the young girl had 3 white furry tails behind her. The moment the young girl appeared in front of the purple river, the surrounding devil apes immediately discovered her. They roared and pounced at her, as if they had gone mad and didn't care about the consequences at all. However, the young girl's second tail swayed gently. She immediately turned into a ray of blue light and disappeared on the spot. Then, Zhuoan discovered in astonishment that the young girl had passed through the purple river and entered its center, right in front of him. How did she do it? Zhuoan couldn't believe it. His Destiny Spacetime Slash could block anything. Even if Master Skyreach wanted to pass through the purple river, he would have to forcefully destroy it. But this young girl actually passed through the purple river directly, entering the center of the long river and standing in front of him. This young girl was naturally My Shu, who had used her innate ability, Spirit Assault. "My friend, please come with me. I can get you out of here," My Shu said to Zhuoan while panting. Her face was pale as she staggered a little. After using Soul Assault twice, it was a huge burden on her. She had nearly exhausted most of her energy. Moreover, using a soul attack would cause serious damage to one's soul. Now, My Shu felt as if his head was about to explode. It was extremely painful. However, she still endured it. In her current state, she could only use Soul Assault one last time. Moreover, after using it, he was afraid that she would directly faint. Before My Shu could reach Zhuoan, his legs became weak and he fell forward. However, My Shu did not fall onto the cold ground. Instead, she fell into a warm embrace. My Shu's delicate body trembled. She looked up at the human in front of her and said in a deep voice, "There's not much time left. I'll use Soul Assault again to get you out of this group of devil apes." Unfortunately, before My Shu could use Soul Assault for the 3rd time, she was stopped by Zhuoan. Zhuoan's spiritual strength was much stronger than My Shu's. He could tell at a glance that My Shu's teleportation ability consumed her spiritual strength as a price. "Your divine soul has been severely damaged. If you use that kind of divine ability again, I'm afraid your divine soul will be permanently damaged. You'd better not use it. Moreover, these devil apes can't do anything to me. You don't have to sacrifice so much just to get me out of this group of devil apes." Zhuoan hugged My Shu and said helplessly. Although this was the first time he had come into contact with My Shu, he could tell that this young girl had no experience at all and was so naive from the way she acted on impulse to save others. Most people would not think of coming back to save someone after getting out of trouble. Moreover, it was to save someone who was not related to them at all. My Shu leaned weakly in Zhuowen's arms. Her delicate face was already red. Ever since she could remember, she had never had physical contact with the opposite sex. Although she was from the nine-tailed fox clan and the young man in front of her looked like a human, they were still of the opposite sex. My Shu felt strange that they had such intimate contact. Zhuowen didn't feel anything. My Shu was too young and innocent, so he didn't think too much about it. Zhuowen took out a divine pill that could restore one's soul and handed it to my Shu. Take this divine pill. My Shu took the divine pill and swallowed it without asking what kind of divine pill it was. You trust me that much? Zhuowen looked at my Shu in surprise. My Shu smiled and said, if you wanted to harm me, you could have killed me just now. You didn't have to do this. But soon, my Shu's beautiful eyes were filled with astonishment. Not long after she consumed the divine pill given by Zhuowen, her exhausted spirit began to recover and her headache was much better. Can you stand up by yourself now? Zhuowen supported my Shu and asked in a deep voice. My Shu struggled to stand up and bowed to Zhuowen. Thank you, big brother, for giving me the divine pellet. You're so powerful. I'm sorry that I came here to trouble you. My Shu scratched her head embarrassedly. After entering the Purple River, she saw that Zhuowen did not look like he was struggling. She knew that it was not as strenuous for him to use such a powerful divine ability. It's okay. After I kill the devil ape, I still have some questions to ask you. I hope you can answer me truthfully, Zhuowen said and ignored my Shu. He took out the Huyi godly bow with his left hand and flicked his right hand to take out the second Huyi godly arrow from the macro world. This Huyi divine arrow was clearly different from the first one. There was no trace of blood on its surface, and it was completely greenish-yellow in color. The body of the arrow was densely covered in profound talisman markings, and it emanated an ancient aura. This Huyi godly arrow was the one Zhuowen had just obtained. It was much more powerful than the first one. My Shu looked at Zhuowen in astonishment. She immediately recalled that the demonic ape leader was pierced by a divine arrow and nailed to the cliff. She knew that the divine arrow must have been shot by the young man in front of her. Chapter 31-34. Devourer King Dai. Zhuowen pulled the Huyi godly bow to its fullest, releasing an earth-shattering killing intent. In an instant, the entire canyon seemed to be filled with this killing intent. The surrounding air froze as an unprecedentedly heavy pressure came crashing down. My Shu, who was standing beside Zhuowen, couldn't react at all. She was pressed down by the terrifying killing intent and couldn't help but lie on the ground. Her three furry tails swayed nervously. Whoosh! The Huyi godly arrow left the bowstring, turning into a dazzling stream of light that streaked across the void. Roar! 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 The devil ape leader sensed the terrifying power of the Huyi godly arrow. His scarlet eyes were filled with unprecedented fear. He kept roaring and struggling violently. Unfortunately, the first Huyi godly arrow nailed him to the rock wall. The killing intent on the arrow entered his body, rendering him powerless and unable to break free. Blood continued to gush out from its chest, causing the devil ape leader to grimace in pain and let out a wail. Meanwhile, the demonic apes that had surrounded Zhuowen sensed that their leader's life was in danger, and they also heard their leader's mournful cry in the midst of a life-and-death crisis. The devil apes decisively gave up on attacking Zhuowen and rushed to the rock wall. Soon after, Zhuowen was shocked to find that the devil apes were like moths to a flame. One after another, they pounced on the second Huyi godly arrow. Poochie! Poochie! All the devil apes that stood in the way of the Huyi godly arrow screamed miserably before they were smashed into pieces by the terrifying power of the arrow. They turned into boundless blood foam that scattered all over the sky. Zhuowen put away the Purple River and pulled my Shu back to where the cavalry of the Divine City was. The group of devil apes had already abandoned Zhuowen long ago. They were risking their lives to save their leader. Unfortunately, even if the devil apes used this suicidal defense, they still couldn't block the Huyi godly arrow. The power of this Huyi divine arrow was simply too terrifying. The greenish-yellow body of the arrow was like a life-reaping god of death. Everything that stood in the way of this arrow was destroyed without exception. Poochie. When the Huyi godly arrow pierced through the last devil ape, it accurately shot into the forehead of the devil ape leader. A powerful killing intent burst out, and the head of the demonic ape leader directly exploded. Countless brain juices splattered and scattered in all directions. The devil ape leader convulsed violently for a while before it stopped moving and died. It's dead. Jiangyi stared at the corpses of the demonic apes, as well as the demonic ape leader whose head had exploded and was nailed to the cliff by Huyi's divine arrow. He was completely stupefied, and his mouth was wide open. The cavalry behind Jiangyi were all shocked, and their eyes were full of reverence as they looked at Zhuowen. Strong experts would-be respected experts. Were they? It was the same in the Xian-Mi heavenly domain, the ancient desolate heavenly domain, and even the massacre heavenly domain. Now that Zhuowen had displayed such terrifying strength in front of them, he deserved their respect. Mai Shu, who was still being pulled by Zhuowen, looked at Jiangyi with eyes full of admiration. In Mai Shu's heart, Jiangyi's strength was second only to her mother. He was an awe-inspiring figure in Divine City and had always been her idol. But now, the devil ape leader and the pack of devil apes that even Jiangyi couldn't deal with had been defeated by this young man. Even the devil ape leader had died in his hands. In Mai Shu's eyes, this young man was stronger than Jiangyi. Most importantly, this young man didn't look very old. Mai Shu's thoughts were complicated. Her heart was beating so fast that it felt like it was going to jump out of her chest. I'm Jiangyi, the Vice City Lord of Hongxian Divine City. Thank you for your help, friend. Jiangyi hurriedly stepped forward and bowed to Zhuowen with a cautious look. Although this young man's aura wasn't strong and was only an eternal overlord, the strength he had just displayed was too terrifying. He didn't fear the entire pack of devil apes with his strength alone. Especially the arrow that he had shot just now. Its killing intent soared to the heavens and destroyed the heavenly Tao. Jiangyi didn't doubt that if he had been the one to face that arrow, he wouldn't have ended up any better than the devil ape leader. However, Jiangyi was puzzled. How could this young man carry such a powerful divine artifact? Logically speaking, spatial divine artifacts couldn't be opened in the massacre heavenly domain. Cultivators usually kept their divine artifacts in their spatial divine artifacts and wouldn't carry them around with them. Therefore, there was no sign of divine artifacts in the massacre heavenly domain. Could it be that this young man always carries his divine artifacts with him and never keeps them in his spatial divine artifacts? Jiangyi thought. I'm Zhuowen. I just entered the massacre heavenly domain not long ago. Zhuowen returned the greeting, but he was shocked. He didn't expect this old man to be the Vice City Lord of Hongxian Divine City. He was lucky that the first person he met in Death Canyon was someone with such a high status. His goal in entering Death Canyon this time was to collect enough jade stones to get the Flowing Cloud tribe to recommend him to Hongxian Divine City. Now that he met the Vice City Lord of Hongxian Divine City, Jiangyi only needed to say a word and he wouldn't need jade stones to enter Hongxian Divine City. However, Zhuowen definitely wouldn't take the initiative to ask for such a thing. If he took the initiative to ask for such a thing, he would be at a disadvantage. Zhuowen said that he was a newcomer. As long as Jiangyi wasn't a fool, he wouldn't let go of this opportunity to rope him in. He would definitely send an invitation. Just as Zhuowen thought, Jiangyi's eyes flashed with excitement when he heard that Zhuowen was a newcomer to the massacre heavenly domain. Brother Zhuo, you can call me Uncle Jiang in the future. I saw your battle just now, and I found the aura of the Devouring King on your body. Are you the king of the Devouring clan? Jiangyi grinned. Mai Shu's ears twitched as she looked at Zhuowen. Since Zhuowen had always been in his human form, Mai Shu had always thought that Zhuowen was a human. Now that Jiangyi had pointed it out, she knew that this young man wasn't a human, but a member of the Devouring clan. Zhuowen smiled and nodded. When he was fighting with the devil ape, he had purposely exposed the aura of the Devouring King to make Jiangyi and the others think that he was a member of the Devouring clan. Brother Zhuo, you're really amazing. The Devouring clan is only a mid-tier clan in the ancient desolate heavenly domain. There aren't many Dao confirming realm experts in the clan. You're so strong. It's a blessing for the devouring clan. My Shu called Zhuoan brother Zhuo as if they were close friends. Jiang Yi looked doubtful. When he found out that Zhuoan was a member of the devouring clan, he had his doubts. The devouring clan was just a mid-tier clan in the ancient desolate heavenly domain. It wasn't eye-catching. If there was someone like Zhuoan, he would have heard of him. Chapter 31-35. Jasper or Vain Brother Zhuo. Brother Zhuo, I believe you know Hongxian God City. Although Hongxian God City is the weakest of the three, it is the closest God City in this region. Moreover, the conditions for joining Hongxian God City are very generous. They are extremely free and will not be restricted. I wonder if Brother Zhuo is interested in joining Hongxian God City? Jiang Yi rubbed his hands and looked at Zhuo Wen with a slightly nervous expression. Although the young man in front of him did not exude a strong aura, his actual strength was terrifying. Moreover, this person gave Jiang Yi a mysterious feeling that he could not see through. Jiang Yi wanted to rope Zhuoan into Hongxian God City very much. After all, Hongxian God City lacked high-level experts. Now that he had met a super expert like Zhuoan, how could he let him go? Looking at Jiang Yi's nervous expression, Zhuoan was a little amused. He had the intention to join Hongxian God City. Now that Jiang Yi had personally invited him, how could he reject? Of course, Zhuoan would not say such words directly. Moreover, he did not intend to join Hongxian God City. He only wanted to enter Hongxian God City and find out the exact location of the forbidden zone of the Massacre Sky region from the City Lord. Uncle Jiang, I have indeed heard of Hongxian God City. However, I have never seen it before. If you want me to join Hongxian God City immediately, I'm afraid you are taking it too lightly. How about this? I will enter Hongxian God City to take a look. If I think it is possible, I will make a decision. Zhuoan pondered for a moment before speaking in a calm voice. Jiang Yi nodded in his heart and thought even more highly of Zhuoan. Not only was the young man in front of him powerful, but his temperament was also exceptionally strong. When faced with a choice, he did not give a direct answer. Instead, he considered carefully. The more he acted like this, the more Jiang Yi valued Zhuoan. He could not wait to bring Zhuoan to Hongxian God City immediately and show the city lord such a young talent. Oh right, Uncle Jiang, Miss My Shu. Why did you mobilize so many people to enter Death Canyon today? I think all of you are more aware of the dangers here than I am, right? Zhuo Wen said casually, appearing very casual. Zhuoan already knew the name of the young girl, which was why he was able to blurt out My Shu's name. Jiang Yi narrowed his eyes and looked at My Shu. He wanted to give the latter a look to tell him not to spout nonsense. Unfortunately, Jiang Yi's warning came too late. My Shu was a simple-minded person. Moreover, Zhuoan had saved her life before. Now that Zhuoan asked this question, she answered without hesitation. Big Brother Zhuo, we entered the Death Canyon for the Jasper or vein. I was born with a unique ability to sense jade stone veins. I can feel that there is an unprecedentedly huge jade stone vein in the depths of Death Canyon. The reason we came here this time is to find the jade stone vein. It's a pity that even with 500 elite cavalrymen, we could only enter 2/3 of the Death Canyon. We underestimated the terror of the Death Canyon. Speaking of this, the little lowly My Shu seemed a little dejected. Her beautiful eyes were slightly red and wet. Jiang Yi smiled awkwardly. His look was ignored by My Shu, which made him feel a little embarrassed. However, when he thought of their failure, Jiang Yi didn't think it was a big deal that Zhuoan knew about this. Although Zhuoan had displayed terrifying strength, Jiang Yi didn't think that Zhuoan had the strength to enter the depths of Death Canyon. They had encountered a group of devil apes led by a devil ape leader in 2/3 of the Death Canyon, which almost wiped out their cavalrymen. Not to mention how terrifying the Death Canyon was in the depths. Isn't this jade stone only harvested from the animals and plants in the Massacre Heavenly Domain? There's actually a jade stone vein underground? Zhuoan asked with a puzzled look. It was the first time he had heard of a jade stone vein. Xiong Fei didn't mention this to him at all. However, he knew that with Xiong Fei's reverence for him, he would definitely not hide such things from him. Since Xiong Fei didn't mention it, Then even Xiong Fei didn't know about this jade stone vein. Brother Zhuo, it's normal that you don't know about the jade stone vein. In the entire massacre heavenly domain, the jade stone vein is a secret that only belongs to the divine cities. The tribes under the divine cities don't even know about the existence of the jade stone vein. As for the jade stone vein, I'm sure you've already guessed it. It's a place where jade stones gather. The bigger the vein, the more jade stones there are. As long as we can find a jade stone vein, it's enough to feed countless large tribe. Since my Shu had confessed to Zhuowen, Jiangyi didn't hide anymore and took the initiative to explain the jade stone vein to Zhuowen. Although there's a jade stone vein in the Death Canyon, it's obviously impossible for us to enter and mine it. We can't even enter the depths of the Death Canyon. Jiangyi shook his head and a trace of depression appeared in his eyes. He continued, now, our wisest choice is to leave the Death Canyon. Zhuowen's eyes lit up as he asked, how many jade stones are there in a jade stone vein? Jiangyi was stunned. Looking at Zhuowen's bright eyes, he had a bad premonition. However, he still answered Zhuowen's question, there's no definite number of jade stones in a jade stone vein. Generally, the quality of jade stones in a small vein isn't high and the quantity isn't high either. It's usually around 1 to 200,000. Larger veins may have up to 4 to 500,000 jade stones. As for larger veins, the jade stones in them are usually more than 1 million. Our Hongxian divine city has been established in the massacre heavenly domain for so many years, but we've only found one large vein. The quality of the jade stones in it is very high and the quantity is more than 1,500,000. Zhuowen nodded as his eyes grew brighter. If he had known about the jade stone vein, he wouldn't have had to work so hard to hunt the beast kings. This was simply a thankless task. Directly finding a small vein would yield much more jade stones than killing all the beast kings in the Death Canyon. Big brother Zhuo, let me tell you, I can sense that the jade stone vein in the Death Canyon is definitely a large vein. If the jade stone vein is mined, it will definitely be worth more than 1 million jade stones. Mai Shu's little face was full of pride, but it soon turned into depression. She said, it's a pity that the jade stone vein in the Death Canyon is not fated with us. Since there's a jade stone vein in the Death Canyon, why don't we continue moving forward? Zhuowen leaped onto the cliff of the gorge in front of the ape leader. He grabbed the 2 Huyi godly arrows nailed to the cliff with both hands and pulled them out. Then, he hung the Huyi godly bow on his back. He didn't want to expose the fact that he could freely access the items in the spatial divine items. After all, this was his secret. Chapter 31-36. Decided to go deeper after retrieving the Huyi divine arrow, Zhuowen jumped down from the cliff and slowly walked towards Jiangyi and Mai Shu. He said indifferently, you're already here. Are you going to give up just like that? Jiangyi looked at Zhuowen strangely and said, Brother Zhuo, you're not thinking of going deeper, are you? You've seen it for yourself. 2/3 of the Death Canyon is already so terrifying. I'm afraid. At this point, Jiangyi shook his head. Obviously, he felt that the deepest part of the Death Canyon was too terrifying. Zhuowen knew what Jiangyi was thinking and did not continue on this topic. He knew that Jiangyi was frightened by the devil apes. Then, do you know the exact location of the jade or vein in the depths of the Death Canyon? Zhuowen asked. Jiangyi shook his head and said, Miss Mai Shu only sensed the approximate location of the jade or vein. We don't know the exact location. If I can enter the depths of the Death Canyon, I can pinpoint the exact location of the jade or vein. Unfortunately, I can't. Mai Shu pouted. Zhuowen's eyes flickered and said, Miss Mai Shu, I can guarantee that I can enter the depths of the Death Canyon. If you can come with me, we'll split the jade or vein equally. How about it? As soon as he said this, Jiangyi immediately objected, no. The depths of the Death Canyon are too dangerous. Miss Mai Shu is the daughter of our Hongxian Divine City's city lord. How can you put yourself in danger? And Brother Zhuo, you can't even guarantee your own safety. Aren't you being too irresponsible by asking Miss Mai Shu to go with you? Jiangyi's tone was agitated. He pulled Mai Shu to his side and looked at Zhuowen cautiously. Zhuowen was surprised and looked at Mai Shu again. He did not expect this cute little loli to have such a noble identity. She was the daughter of the Hongxian Divine City's city lord. If other people from the Slaughter Heaven region heard of my Shu's identity, they would definitely be afraid. It was a pity that Zhuowen didn't feel much about it. More accurately, he didn't have much of an idea of what a city lord was. Of course, given Zhuowen's personality, even if he knew how terrifying the God City was, he still wouldn't be afraid. Uncle Jiang, you don't have to be so agitated. Am I not asking for Miss Mai Shu's opinion? If she doesn't agree, I won't force her. When the time comes, I'll go in alone to take a look. Maybe I'll find something. Zhuowen shrugged helplessly. This Jiang Yi was simply guarding against him like a cat protecting its cub, and this caused him to be slightly speechless. Jiang Yi heaved a sigh of relief. He was most afraid that Zhuowen would forcefully bring Mai Shu into the depths of Death Canyon. After all, Zhuowen's strength was very strange and unpredictable. Someone who could defeat a group of devil apes was definitely stronger than him. If Zhuowen really used force, Jiang Yi might not be able to block Zhuowen. Brother Zhuo, it's impossible for our miss to follow you into the depths of the canyon. That's simply courting death. You better give up. Oh right, I advise you not to try to enter the canyon. It's too dangerous. Compared to your life, the jade or vein is not worth mentioning. Jiang Yi shook his head and tried to persuade Zhuowen. Unfortunately, Mai Shu's words immediately made his body stiffen. Mai Shu broke free from Jiang Yi and came to Zhuowen. She said excitedly, Brother Zhuo, are you sure you can enter the depths of the canyon? If you are, you must bring me along. Jiang Yi stared blankly at Mai Shu. Zhuowen glanced at the stunned Jiang Yi and immediately said to the excited Mai Shu, Miss Mai Shu, you trust me so much? I think you already know how dangerous the depths of the canyon are. I know. But I trust Brother Zhuo more. You're so powerful. If you say you're sure, then you must be sure. Mai Shu's eyes lit up and her voice was soft. Jiang Yi hurriedly said, Miss, you mustn't. Brother Zhuo's strength is indeed not bad, but the dangers in the depths of the canyon are beyond our imagination. It's said that there are masters of heaven-level killing beasts in there. If there really is such a killing beast, even the city lord himself might not be able to escape. Mai Shu pouted and said, Uncle Jiang, you're too timid. Masters of heaven-level killing beasts have never appeared in so many years. Even if Death Canyon is famous for its ferocity, there might not be a killing beast of this level. Also, didn't you see Brother Zhuo's strength just now? That devil ape leader had the strength of a peak master of creation, but it was still killed by Brother Zhuo. I'll be safe with him. Zhuowen glanced at Mai Shu. Ever since he saved this little girl, she seemed to have blind worship for him. Jiang Yi was speechless. He sighed lightly and took a step forward to Mai Shu. He stretched out his right hand, intending to forcefully pull Mai Shu back. Unfortunately, Jiang Yi's right hand was blocked by another palm. Boom! A terrifying energy ripple spread out, causing Jiang Yi to groan and retreat. He raised his head and looked at Zhuowen with fear in his eyes. He said in a deep voice, Brother Zhuo, what is the meaning of this? Miss Mai Shu is the daughter of our city lord. If anything happens to her in Death Canyon, you will be punished and hunted down by our Hongxian Divine City. Uncle Jiang, I said that I won't force Miss Mai Shu. I have already asked for her opinion, and she has agreed. Zhuowen's voice was calm as he continued, also, I solemnly declare that I will be responsible for Miss Mai Shu's safety, unless I die. I don't believe your promise. Unless you kill me today, I will not let Miss Mai Shu follow you into the depths of the canyon. Jiang Yi snorted coldly and took a step forward with his right foot. The spear in his hand shot out, bringing with it a terrifying gale and an ear-piercing roar. In an instant, it was in front of Zhuowen. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and stretched out his right hand, using the fate space-time annihilation. A purple river swept out and swept away Jiang Yi's spear. Within the range of the river, space-time was distorted. Jiang Yi's movements became very slow at this moment. Zhuowen took a step forward and slammed his palm on Jiang Yi's chest. Jiang Yi spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. His face was extremely pale. Uncle Jiang, Your injuries are too serious. Moreover, your body doesn't have much heavenly energy left. You are no match for me in your current state. Zhuowen kept the purple river and shook his head as he looked at Jiang Yi, who was in a terrible state. I said that I will not let you take my shoe away today. Jiang Yi's eyes were filled with unwillingness. He puffed out his chest and continued to walk towards Zhuowen. Uncle Jiang, I order you not to fight. Moreover, you must listen to my orders from now on. My shoe suddenly stood in front of Jiang Yi and took out a white token from his cuff. Chapter 31-37. Lunatic Jiang Yi stopped in his tracks and looked at the white token in my shoe's hand. His face turned ugly. Young miss, this Hongxian command token was given to you by the city lord. Use it to forcefully control all the armies in Hongxian God City in times of crisis. This token is equivalent to the city lord himself. You can only use it once, but you actually used it now. Jiang Yi's eyes were filled with disbelief as he stared at the token in my shoe's hand. His voice was trembling. My shoe sighed, Uncle Jiang. I'm not young anymore. I can make my own decisions. You've always treated me like a child. How can I grow up? I was forced to do this. Jiang Yi lowered his head and smiled bitterly. Young miss, you're right. I've meddled too much. When he spoke up to hear, Jiang Yi suddenly raised his head and looked at Zhuowen as he said, Brother Zhuo, I'll go with you into the depths of the gorge this time. Zhuowen flatly refused. In Zhuowen's opinion, Jiang Yi and my shoe were burdens. After all, they couldn't recover their heavenly energy in the slaughter heaven region and their strength would be greatly reduced. Moreover, Jiang Yi had suffered serious injuries. Other than being a burden, they would only be a burden. On the other hand, he was different. He could continuously draw out large amounts of heavenly Tao origin crystals from the outside world to recover. Jiang Yi, on the other hand, would only consume even more heavenly Tao origin crystals. Moreover, he would have to pay more attention to Jiang Yi. Moreover, taking heavenly law origin crystals from the outside world was his secret. The fewer people who knew about it, the better. He didn't want Jiang Yi to go with him. Jiang Yi was furious. Just as he was about to refute, my shoe said, Uncle Jiang, listen to Brother Zhuo. I believe he won't harm us. Jiang Yi was helpless. Now that my shoe had the Hongxian token, he had no choice but to listen to her. After dealing with Jiang Yi, Zhuowen rang the bronze bell. Soon, Xiong Fei arrived with a group of beast men. When Xiong Fei and the others saw the cavalry led by Jiang Yi, they were stunned. They stopped in their tracks and didn't dare to move forward. To them, the divine city was like an unreachable god. To them, the divine city cavalry was even more distant. Therefore, the moment they saw the divine city cavalry, they subconsciously lowered their heads and did not dare to approach. Zhuowen looked at Xiong Fei and the others in amusement and waved his hand, indicating for them to come over. Xiong Fei carefully came to Zhuowen's side and said in a low voice, Master Zhuo, what is going on? Did you offend the God City's cavalry? They're all on our side. There's no need to offend them. Zhuowen laughed. But Xiong Fei was frightened until he trembled and hurriedly said in a low voice, Lord Zhuo, I know that your strength is formidable, but you can't talk big in front of the divine city's powerhouses either. The leader was obviously an expert with a high position in the divine city. How can we be compared to him? Zhuowen shook his head inwardly and ignored Xiong Fei who was on tenterhooks. Instead, he turned to Jiang Yi and said, Uncle Jiang, these people are from the Flowing Cloud tribe. This is the chief of the Flowing Cloud tribe, Xiong Fei. While I'm in the valley, all of you stay here and collect the jade stones from the devil ape's corpse. I will set up a creation-grade defensive formation here. This formation will be able to block off any killing beasts below the level of Master Tongtian. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he secretly took out the beast bone disc array and walked to the edge of the area. In a radius of 5 miles, he drew the outline of a formation. After using the beast bone disc array to set up the base of the formation, Zhuowen did not use the Heavenly Way origin crystal this time. Instead, he used the jade stones collected by Xiong Fei and the others to set up the base of the formation, completely completing the defensive formation. Creation-grade defensive formation? You're a creation-grade formation godmaster? Jiang Yi was completely shocked. His heart was filled with disbelief. However, after seeing that Zhuowen had really set up a creation-grade defensive formation, he was speechless. Brother Zhuo, you're awesome. Other than being powerful, you're actually so terrifying in terms of formation Dao. Even our Hongxian Divine City doesn't have a single creation-grade formation godmaster. If my mother sees you, she will definitely be overjoyed. Mai Shu was stunned. Soon after, her beautiful eyes were filled with even more admiration. Miss Mai Shu, how's your recovery? If you haven't recovered, we can rest here for a period of time. After setting up the defensive formation, Zhuowen came to Mai Shu and asked. Mai Shu shook her head and said, there's no need for that. The divine pill that Brother Zhuo gave me just now was too effective. After consuming the divine pill, most of my divine soul has recovered. Let's set off now. Zhuowen carefully sized up Mai Shu. After confirming that she had indeed recovered well, he nodded and led Mai Shu out of the defensive formation. Looking at Zhuowen and Mai Shu's silhouettes, Jiang Yi was a little dejected. He muttered softly, Miss, you must return safely. Otherwise, how am I going to explain this to the city lord when I return to the divine city? Sir, are the two of them going deep into the valley? Xiong Fei cautiously approached Jiang Yi and asked in a soft voice. Jiang Yi glanced at Xiong Fei. The dejected aura on his body dissipated and was replaced by a dignified aura. I heard from Zhuowen that you are the chief of the Flowing Cloud tribe. Moreover, Zhuowen seems to have a good relationship with you. Is Zhuowen from your tribe? Jiang Yi looked at Xiong Fei and asked. Xiong Fei quickly shook his head and said, Sir Zhuo is not from our Flowing Cloud tribe. I heard that he is a newcomer who has just entered the Slaughter Heaven domain. He does not belong to any faction in the Slaughter Heaven domain. Why do you want to enter the Death Valley? It's not like you don't know how terrifying the Death Valley is. Jiang Yi calmly asked. We don't want to. The main reason is that Sir Zhuo wants to enter the Death Valley to hunt for more emerald stones. Xiong Fei said helplessly. Why does he want so many emerald stones? Jiang Yi asked. It seems that he wants to enter the Divine City. Large tribes are qualified to recommend a person to enter the Divine City. However, the recommendation requires a hefty price of 10,000 emerald stones. Our tribe only has a little over 3,000 emerald stones. Sir Zhuo wants to obtain emerald stones quickly, so he came to the Death Valley to hunt for Slaughter Beast. Xiong Fei said. He really is a madman. He is not afraid of death at all. Jiang Yi held his forehead. This Zhuowen is too crazy. In order to obtain emerald stones quickly, he did not care about his life at all. But soon, Jiang Yi felt suspicious. He had already invited Zhuowen to enter the Divine City. In other words, if he entered the Hongxian Divine City now, there was no need for him to collect emerald stones. Chapter 31-38. Deep in the Death Canyon, the canyon was pitch black and eerily silent. The sound of footsteps colliding with the ground was eerie and horrifying in the empty canyon. Mai Shu stuck close to Zhuowen as her beautiful eyes scanned the surroundings nervously. Zhuowen did not walk fast. His muscles were tense as he was constantly alert of his surroundings. He was very surprised. He had left Jiang Yi and the others for more than 2 hours and was slowly approaching the deepest part of the canyon. However, he did not encounter any danger along the way. His surroundings were eerily quiet. Big Brother Zhuo, what do you need so many jade stones for? If we can find the jade stone vein this time, we will need a lot of manpower and resources to mine it. You alone might not be enough. Perhaps Mai Shu felt that the surroundings were too quiet, so she opened her mouth to break the silence. I do need a lot of jade stones now. As for what they are used for, this is a secret. As for mining, I have my own considerations. Zhuowen smiled. His purpose in entering the Death Canyon was to quickly accumulate jade stones by hunting beasts. After accumulating 10,000 jade stones, he would ask the Drifting Cloud tribe to recommend him to enter the Hongxian Divine City. However, after meeting Mai Shu and Jiang Yi, entering the God City became easier than eating a meal for him. He did not need to deliberately collect jade stones. The reason he wanted to find the jade stones hidden in the depths of the canyon was mainly for the mysterious stone. Since absorbing the jade stones of the Tianyi tribe, the mysterious stone seemed to have been enlightened. He guessed that the mysterious stone had been in a deep slumber before, but the jade stones could awaken it. Of course, although the mysterious stone could move now, he could feel that it had not fully awakened. Moreover, the mysterious stone's desire for jade stones was getting stronger. Most of the jade stones collected by Xiong Fei and the others were kept in Zhuowen's macro world. Originally, he wanted to use these jade stones to enter the Divine City. Since Jiang Yi had promised to let him enter the Divine City, he did not need to keep them. Therefore, he gave all the jade stones in the macro world to the mysterious stone. The mysterious stone cheered and absorbed all the jade stones in the macro world. After absorbing all the jade, the mysterious stone was still not satisfied. It wanted to absorb even more jade. This shocked Zhuowen. He had thousands of jade stones in his great world, and they had all been absorbed by the mysterious stone. However, the mysterious stone was not satisfied. Zhuowen knew that if he wanted to satisfy this mysterious stone, he would need a large amount of jade stones. Mai Shu had mentioned that there was a jade ore vein in the depths of the canyon, which was perfect for the mysterious stone to absorb. Zhuowen had a premonition that if he could let the mysterious stone absorb enough energy, it would be able to reveal the true face of the stone. When Mai Shu saw that Zhuowen didn't want to talk about it, she could only give a no and didn't want to talk about it any further. She had entered the Death Canyon for the jade stone vein, and she had no doubts about Zhuowen's strength. That was why she was willing to point out the exact location of the jade stone vein for Zhuowen and go deep into the Death Canyon. The two of them traveled through the canyon for a period of time. Finally, they felt that something was wrong. Along the way, the canyon was too quiet. They didn't even see a trace of a killer beast. All of this was very strange. We have reached the deepest part of the canyon. Zhuowen stopped and looked at the towering rock wall in front of him. This was the end of the canyon. Apart from this rock wall, there was nothing else around them. Not even a trace of a killer beast could be seen. Miss Mai Shu, can you sense the location of the jade stone vein now? A trace of haze flashed in Zhuowen's eyes. He felt that something was wrong. As for what was wrong, he couldn't tell. He could only ask Mai Shu about the location of the jade stone vein. Mai Shu's 3 furry tails swayed gently. Her pair of beautiful eyes looked around as she observed the surrounding environment. Soon, her eyes locked on to the front left. There stood an irregular stone pillar that was half the height of a person. Brother Zhuo, the jade stone vein should be under this stone pillar. Mai Shu came to the front of the stone pillar. A trace of excitement flashed in her beautiful eyes. Be careful. Zhuowen shouted and took a step forward. He grabbed Mai Shu's jade-like hand and forcefully pulled her over. Mai Shu screamed and jumped into Zhuowen's arms. Her eyes fell on the stone pillar. She found that the stone pillar had turned into a giant python covered in rocks. To be more precise, the stone pillar was the giant python in disguise. The giant python's body was as thick as a bucket. Its huge head opened its scarlet eyes and stared at Zhuowen. Its mouth was wide open as if it was angry at Zhuowen for being a busybody. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. The giant python's aura was very strong. It had the strength of an early-stage creator. Zhuowen naturally didn't care about such strength. What he was concerned about was that there might be more than one rock python in the deepest part of the Death Canyon. Whoosh! The giant python hissed and shot out like a spring. It swept toward Zhuowen. A fishy wind swept over. You're courting death. Zhuowen grunted coldly as his right hand emitted a crystalline and translucent glow, and he suddenly stretched out his hand to grab the enormous python that flashed over. The power of the Pangu sacred body poured out. The giant python screamed and its head was crushed by Zhuowen's palm. Big brother Zhuo, look, there's a cave where the giant python was just now, Mai Shu suddenly said. Only then did Zhuowen notice that the place Mai Shu had pointed out was indeed a cave that led to the depths of the underground. The size of the cave was just enough to accommodate a person. The giant python coiled its body and covered the cave, so they didn't notice it for a while. Go in. The moment the cave appeared, Zhuowen immediately carried my Shu, who didn't know what was going on, and rushed into the cave. The moment Zhuowen entered the cave, he immediately took out the array disc he had prepared from the Great World and placed it at the entrance of the cave. The array disc was set up by Zhuowen before he entered the Death Canyon. It was a peak creator-level defensive array. He had spent a lot of effort to set it up. Bang! 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 The moment Zhuowen placed the array disc at the entrance of the cave, a series of crashing sounds came from the entrance. It was as if there were countless creatures installed on the array disc. If Zhuowen and my Shu saw the scene outside the cave, they would definitely feel their scalps go numb. The rocks on both sides of the cave, which was 10 kilometers away, were squirming. Then, giant pythons with scarlet eyes appeared one after another. These giant pythons were exactly the same as the giant pythons Zhuowen had just killed. Zhuowen didn't expect that the walls on both sides of the canyon were actually the giant pythons in disguise. Roar. Chapter 31-39. King Snake Rumble. The rock walls on both sides collapsed with a loud rumble. Then, an unprecedentedly terrifying giant python rushed out from the rock walls on both sides. The size of these two giant pythons far exceeded the countless wriggling pythons around them. Each python was thousands of feet long, and their surface was as hard as a rock. Especially their necks, they had huge semicircular wings on their backs, making them look like larger versions of king cobras. The appearance of these two pythons silenced all the other rock pythons in the valley. They stopped squirming and lay on the ground, motionless as a sign of submission. These two pythons were clearly the leaders of the countless rock pythons. They were the true king snakes. Hiss. The two king snakes walked side by side, and the rock pythons in front of them made way for them. Finally, the two king snakes arrived at the entrance of the cave that Zhuowen had entered. At the entrance, there was a sparkling stream of light. It was the creation-grade defensive array that Zhuowen had set up the moment he entered the cave. Around the stream of light, there were bloodstains and many rock pythons' corpses. It was clear that many rock pythons had crashed into the array the moment they tried to drill into the cave. Their heads were broken and bleeding, and some had even died. The two king snakes stopped at the entrance of the cave, and their scarlet eyes stared at the stream of light. Rumble. One of the king snakes dashed out, and its huge head collided with the stream of light. Suddenly, the stream of light fluctuated violently, but the king snake's head, which was covered with hard scales, remained unscathed. The king snake raised its head, and the other king snake dashed out like lightning, also using its head to attack the array. Bang! 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 Next, the two king snakes took turns attacking. The array shook violently, and the stream of light on the surface of the array began to dim. Inside the cave, on the other side of the array, Zhuowen and my Shu's faces were not looking good. The aura of these two king snakes is terrifying. It's even more terrifying than the devil ape leader. Are these two king snakes Skyreach master killer beasts? My Shu's pretty face was pale as she asked worriedly. These two king serpents are not transcending heaven-slaying beasts, but half-step transcending heaven-slaying beast. However, the two of them are extremely well coordinated. If the two of them were to attack together, they would definitely be able to fight against an early-stage heavenly master. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. These two king snakes were very difficult to deal with. Moreover, if they continued to bombard the array like this, the array wouldn't be able to last much longer. Brother Zhuowen, what should we do now? My Shu asked nervously as she looked at Zhuowen. Don't worry, so what if the formation is broken? It's just two half-step heavenspan king snakes. They can't do anything to me. Let's go deeper and find the jade or vein first. Zhuowen's gaze was calm. With his strength, he was indeed not afraid of killing beasts that were half a step into the heavenly path. In addition, he could replenish heavenly path energy at any time. Even if he were to face those two king serpents head-on, Zhuowen would not be afraid. My Shu looked at Zhuowen's calm eyes. For some reason, she felt at ease. She nodded gently and looked at the dark passage below. She said with certainty, Brother Zhuo, the jade or vein is below. I can feel that the jade or vein below is very large. It's definitely a million-grade jade or vein. Okay, then let's go down. Zhuowen pulled my shoe and went straight into the depths of the cave. They kept going down, completely ignoring the king snakes that were still bombarding the array. The two of them went all the way down. After about an hour, they reached the end of the passage. Walking out of the passage, Zhuowen found that they were in a huge open space. The surroundings were emitting a green light. He looked around and narrowed his eyes. He clearly saw the source of the green light. It was emitted by the jade ores embedded in the surrounding rock walls. These jade ores were completely different from the jade ores inside the bodies of the killing beasts. The surface was extremely rough and was basically made up of dozens or even hundreds of jade ores stuck together. Moreover, the surface was covered by rocks. Zhuowen looked ahead and found that there was a huge and spacious passage ahead. The passage was very deep and he couldn't see the end. On both sides of the passage, there were countless jade ores that were emitting a mysterious green light. Someone must have mined this passage. However, the goal of the person who mined it wasn't the jade ores, but something in the depths of this passage. Zhuowen could tell at a glance that this passage was man-made. Moreover, the jade ores in the surroundings were basically untouched. He had many guesses in his mind. This is definitely the largest jadestone mine I've ever seen. I really didn't expect that there would be such a large jadestone mine in Death Canyon. If our Hongxian Divine City could obtain this jadestone mine, then Mother wouldn't have to worry about the lack of jadestone. My Shu looked at the jade ores that were emitting a green light. Her beautiful eyes were filled with unprecedented joy. Zhuowen took out the beast bone array disc and set up a creation-grade defensive array at the end of the passage. Zhuowen had observed the surrounding soil. It was obviously much tougher than the soil in Death Valley. Even if the two king serpents above attacked with all their might, they might not be able to destroy the soil. In addition, the passage leading to the bottom was too narrow. The two king serpents definitely wouldn't be able to enter. Only the small rock pythons would be able to enter. The small rock pythons were ordinary in strength. It was unlikely that they would be able to break through the creation-grade defensive array that he had just set up. Let's go. Let's take a look ahead. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. He pulled my shoe and walked deeper into the passage. Not long after Zhuowen left, piles of rock pythons swarmed over from the end of the passage like rain. However, these rock pythons were quickly blocked by the defensive array at the end of the passage. They piled up in the passage like a black torrent. 2/3 of Death Valley, Jiangyi, Xiongfei, and the others had noticed the two king serpents the moment they appeared. Although they were quite far from the depths, the two king serpents were too big. They couldn't help but notice them. What terrifying killing beasts! Are these two king serpents monsters at the level of heaven-reaching master? Xiongfei's pupils shrank. The moment he saw the killing beasts, he trembled. His knees went soft and he almost knelt down. Jiangyi's eyes were full of worry. He knew that these two terrifying king serpents must have been lured out by Zhuowen and my Shu. He didn't care about Zhuowen's safety at all. He only cared about my Shu's safety. However, Jiangyi didn't dare to rush over. The two king serpents were even more terrifying than the devil ape leader. He would be courting death if he went over. Suddenly, the two king serpents turned their heads and looked at Jiangyi. Immediately, one of the king serpents darted over like lightning, intending to kill them all. Run. Chapter 3140. Crimson Moon Wave Milk. The king snake was very fast. In less than 10 breaths of time, it had covered 1/3 of the canyon. Bang! However, the moment the king snake reached 2/3 of the canyon, it immediately crashed into the defensive array. The king snake was dizzy from the impact, and its huge snake body was pushed back by the recoil. Let's go. We can't stay here for long. At this moment, Jiangyi and the rest had already escaped to the edge of the array. Seeing that the array had blocked the king snake, they were delighted. However, they did not dare to delay and fled with all their might. After the king snake had completely destroyed the array, it could no longer see the figures of the foreign races. It was completely enraged. The foreign races that it regarded as ants had actually escaped from under its nose. It could not stand it. Therefore, it suddenly rushed out and chased after them again. This time, it must completely exterminate the foreign races to vent its anger. However, the king serpent had just destroyed a defensive formation when it crashed into another one after flying for a short distance. This time, it crashed even harder. It was so hard that it saw stars and almost fainted. The king snake was furious. It swung its huge tail and spent a lot of effort to destroy the second array. But then, the king snake crashed into the defensive array one after another. In the end, the king snake roared angrily but did not dare to chase after them. It was scared by the array. After Jiang Yi and the others escaped from the canyon, they looked at the pitch-black canyon behind them with fear and trepidation in their hearts. This time, it's all thanks to Master Zhuo's array. If it wasn't for those arrays, we might not have been able to come back. Xiong Fei sat on the ground. Thinking about the terror of the king snake, he felt a wave of fear. He was even more grateful to Zhuowen. The beast men behind Xiong Fei nodded like chicks pecking at rice. After surviving the calamity, they were even more grateful to Zhuo Wen, who had set up the formation. Jiang Yi's expression was complicated. He approved of Zhuowen's actions in setting up the array. He also had a whole new level of respect for Zhuowen. However, he was very depressed because Mai Shu had been tricked by Zhuowen. He did not know whether she was dead or alive. Drip, drip, drip. The clear sound of water dripping could be heard from the front of the tunnel. Zhuowen stopped in his tracks. When he saw the scene in front of him, he was stunned. He and Mai Shu walked in the passageway for half a day and finally reached the end of the passageway. At the end of the passageway was a stone chamber that wasn't too small. And in this stone room, the most conspicuous thing was the pool in the center. The pool took up half of the stone room. The pool was filled with milky white liquid. However, the surface of the pool reflected a crimson crescent moon, and around the crescent moon were bright stars. The crescent moon and the surrounding starlight seemed to really be shadows reflected on the pool. But in reality, there was no crescent moon or stars above the pool. The only thing that existed was a milky white stalactite. At the sharp end of the stalactite, there were drops of milky white liquid. Clearly, this pool was formed from the accumulation of these drops of liquid. When Zhuowen saw this strange pool, his pupils shrank to the size of needles, and his body trembled with excitement. "Is this the crimson moon star wave milk?" Zhuowen muttered to himself with an excited expression. The crimson moon star wave milk was a heaven-piercing divine medicine. This milk contained extremely rich heavenly path energy. It was said that directly using the crimson moon star wave milk to cultivate was dozens of times more effective than using a supreme-grade heavenly path origin crystal. This showed how precious and powerful the crimson moon star wave milk was. In addition, the crimson moon star wave milk was one of the 6 heaven-piercing divine medicines used to refine the 6 desires spirit-condensing saint pill. Mai Shu also recognized the crimson moon star wave milk. Her 3 furry tails wagged excitedly. The moment Zhuowen entered the stone room, he immediately felt a terrifying gust of wind sweeping over. This gust of wind contained a powerful suction force. It was like a giant hand, pulling Zhuowen to the left and front. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He stomped his right foot on the ground, and the power of the Pangu sacred body erupted. His foot left a deep mark on the ground. Then, Zhuowen reluctantly pulled himself out of the stone room. Mai Shu's pretty face changed slightly. She looked at Zhuowen with concern and asked, "Brother Zhuowen, are you okay?" Zhuowen waved his hand, indicating that he was fine. Then, his eyes fell on the left side of the stone room, near the pool. The strange gust of wind just now had suddenly come from that place. Zhuowen casually pulled a piece of jade from the wall and threw it into the stone room. Then, Zhuowen clearly felt a powerful suction force coming from the stone room. Then, he saw a strange whirlpool suddenly appear on the left side of the pool. This whirlpool was not big, only about the size of a palm. A small gust of wind swept out from the whirlpool and swept the jade stone into the whirlpool. Then, the whirlpool disappeared, and the stone room returned to normal. Zhuowen's eyes were hazy. He could not see through the whirlpool on the left side of the pool. The gust of wind that swept out from the whirlpool had almost swept him away. If he had not released the power of the Pangu sacred body, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Zhuowen began to mobilize the power of the Pangu banner in his spirit. He planned to use the banner to extend his spirit sense. In the slaughter heavenly domain, spirit sense was forbidden. No one could use it, and Zhuowen was no exception. However, the Pangu banner was an exception. It was an item of Pangu, a supreme treasure that had existed since the beginning of the starry sky. If Zhuowen used the power of the Pangu banner, his spirit sense could be condensed to a terrifying level. However, it would be very harmful to the spirit. Zhuowen rarely used the Pangu banner to condense his spirit sense. But now, the whirlpool on the left side of the Scarlet Moon stellar milk pool gave him a very dangerous feeling. He had to use his soul consciousness to check the situation of the whirlpool. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to enter the stone room to take the Scarlet Moon stellar milk. A golden light flashed between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Then, a gust of spirit sense swept out from between his eyebrows. The moment his spirit sense swept out, Zhuowen pulled out another jade stone from the wall and threw it into the stone room. The whirlpool appeared again, sweeping out the same gust of wind and sweeping the jade stone into the whirlpool. At this moment, Zhuowen's spirit sense shot out like lightning and entered the whirlpool. The moment his spirit sense entered the whirlpool, Zhuowen saw a figure sitting cross-legged inside. The figure was a green skeleton. The green skeleton sat quietly with its legs crossed. Its body contained an ancient and powerful aura that slowly spread out like a sea of clouds. Chapter 3141. Epiphany. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with bewilderment. He actually sensed an ancient aura from the green skeleton that was similar to that of the green-furred corpse he encountered in the 8 heavens. This aura was very unique. Only powerful existences that had existed for an extremely long time could emit such an aura. Zhuowen wasn't sure whether the green skeleton had fallen or not. His spiritual sense had entered the whirlpool for too short a time. He had only glanced at it once, so he wasn't able to clearly see the state of the green skeleton. Zhuowen threw another jade stone into the stone room, and the whirlpool appeared again. This time, Zhuowen was familiar with it, and his divine sense penetrated the whirlpool like lightning. Then, he rushed toward the green skeleton. When Zhuowen approached the green skeleton, he discovered the source of the strange wind that swept out from the whirlpool. Inside the left sternum of the green skeleton, a green heart was still beating, but it was beating very slowly. Every time the heart beat, a strong wind with a strong suction force swept out. The absorbed jade stones entered the vortex and entered the heart, becoming a part of the heart's energy. Thinking about how he had almost been sucked in by the astral wind, Zhuowen could not help but break out in a cold sweat. If his entire body was sucked into the whirlpool, would he also become a part of this strange heart? As the whirlpool closed, a trace of blood leaked out from the corner of Zhuowen's mouth. His face was pale. With the power of the Pangu banner, he had forcibly used his divine will twice, which had caused considerable damage to his divine soul. Brother Zhuo, are you all right? Did you use the power of your divine sense just now? Seeing Zhuowen's pale face, Mai Shu couldn't help but ask with concern. At the same time, Mai Shu recalled the power that had rushed out from Zhuowen's forehead. She was very familiar with that power. It was the power of divine sense. Mai Shu couldn't believe it. No one could mobilize their divine sense in the slaughter heaven region. Even her mother, who was a master of the sky-reaching realm, couldn't do it. However, this young man was able to do it. At this moment, Mai Shu felt that Zhuowen was even more mysterious and powerful, and the worship in her heart grew stronger. I'm fine. Just now, I used a secret method to use the power of my divine sense. However, I had to pay a great price. Zhuowen shook his head and continued, the whirlpool just now was actually a micro-world, and there was a skeleton in that micro-world. That skeleton was very strange. It seemed to be dead, but there was a beating heart in its chest. The astral wind that swept out from the whirlpool was generated by the heart. Brother Zhuo, we don't need this Scarlet Moon stellar starwave milk. The owner of that skeleton is most likely an extremely powerful existence. He might be guarding the crimson moon stellar wave milk. Maishu said. Just now, when he accidentally entered the stone room, he immediately discovered that the heavenly energy in the stone room was even denser than the ore tunnel outside, and the source of this pure heavenly energy should be the crimson moon stellar wave milk. After all, the scarlet moon stellar starwave milk was a divine medicine that was easier for cultivators to absorb and cultivate than the supreme-grade heavenly path origin crystals. Moreover, Zhuowen guessed that the green skeleton was using the heavenly energy in the stone chamber to restore itself. It should still be in a state of hibernation. Otherwise, the green skeleton wouldn't have been so quiet when he entered the stone chamber. Of course, if Zhuowen didn't know what was good for him and directly entered the stone chamber to remove the pool of scarlet moon stellar starwave milk, he would immediately wake the green skeleton up. Zhuowen guessed that the green skeleton was definitely a master of the sky-reaching realm. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary master of the sky-reaching realm. If this guy really woke up, it would be a disaster for Zhuowen. He might not be able to defeat this green skeleton. Let's get out of here first. That green skeleton isn't simple. We can't wake it up now. Let's mine all the scarlet moon stones here first. Zhuowen nodded and led Maishu out of the stone chamber. Then, he waved his right hand and took out a black stone. Maishu's beautiful eyes were filled with confusion when she saw Zhuowen take out the stone. She didn't know why Zhuowen took it out. Moreover, Maishu also noticed that although the stone looked ordinary, when she looked at it, she felt like she was looking at a spiritual creature. It was as if the thing in front of her wasn't a cold stone, but a spiritual pet. Remember, you can only absorb half of the reserves in this mineral vein. You can't absorb more than that. Do you understand? Under Maishu's strange gaze, Zhuowen was actually lecturing the stone in his hand as if he was educating a child. Then, Zhuowen let go of his right hand. The surface of the stone emitted a faint light and suddenly swept out. Maishu was shocked to find that wherever the stone passed, the surrounding emerald stones embedded in the rock wall were all dimmed and turned into dust. The energy in the scarlet moonstones was actually absorbed by the stone in an instant. This mineral vein was really big. He roughly estimated that there were more than 2 million scarlet moonstones in this mineral vein. Half of the mineral vein was more than 1 million scarlet moonstones. With so many scarlet moonstones and their quality, it should be enough to satisfy the mysterious stone, right? Zhuowen silently watched the mysterious stone's movements, but he was not confident. Big Brother Zhuo, Maishu, on the other hand, was dumbfounded. What kind of stone did Zhuowen take out? It was simply a glutton. It actually absorbed all the jade stones within a few hundred meters in such a short time and continued to move forward. I obtained this stone by accident. I don't know its origin, but this thing is very useful to me. Absorbing the scarlet moonstones can help it recover. This time, I was determined to find the scarlet moonstone vein mainly because of this stone. Zhuowen finished speaking and followed behind the mysterious stone with Maishu. Although Maishu was simple, she was not stupid. She knew that this thing was related to Zhuowen's secret, so she wisely did not continue to ask. When Zhuowen reached the middle of the tunnel, Zhuowen immediately ordered the mysterious stone to stop. The mysterious stone was constantly flying in the tunnel, reluctantly shaking at the scarlet moonstones in front of it. Zhuowen did not care about the mysterious stone's thoughts and grabbed it in his hand. The moment he grabbed the stone, a mysterious energy was transmitted from the stone. At this moment, the mysterious stone's surface seemed to have undergone some kind of transformation. The surface of the stone, which was originally as black as coal, was now covered with neat and mysterious patterns. Zhuowen's eyes immediately revealed a look of understanding. He knew that the mysterious stone was reciprocating its gratitude, allowing him to enter into an epiphany. Chapter 31:42.12 Divine Fiend's Formation. When Maishu saw Zhuowen sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, she knew that Zhuowen was in a state of epiphany. Therefore, she did not disturb Zhuowen. Instead, she sat quietly to one side to protect Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen was in an extremely profound state of comprehension. He formed hand seals with both hands, and the traces of formations surged out from his hands. They appeared as streaks of light in the air, which seemed resplendent and varied. At the same time, Zhuowen took out the true record of elixir arrays from the macro world and flipped open the chapter on formations. He kept flipping through the contents. This epiphany was a rare opportunity, so he chose to continue comprehending formations. In the Slaughter Heaven domain, formations were obviously more useful than elixir arts. As long as he could improve his formation skills to the heavenly passage level through this epiphany, he was confident that he could take away the crimson moon stellar wave milk in the stone chamber deep in the mineral vein. No matter how strong the green skeleton was, it could not break through the heavenly passage level formation in a short time. Time slowly passed. Zhuowen's hands constantly moved in the air, forming complicated seals. Gradually, the outline of a powerful array formation began to form around him. Although the formation only had an outline, the aura it emitted was becoming more and more terrifying and powerful. The moment Mai Shu saw the outline of the formation, her beautiful eyes could not help but shrink into needles. Mai Shu's origin was not ordinary. She was from the Nine-Tailed Fox clan, one of the top 10 clans in the primitive heaven domain. Since she was young, she had been exposed to a lot of high-level knowledge and knew many high-level formations and divine medicines. She was somewhat familiar with the formation that Zhuowen was setting up. She had never seen the real formation, but she had seen the description and pattern of this formation in the ancient books in her mother's study. She also remembered the rough outline of the formation. This formation was called the 12 Divine Fiends formation, a genuine heavenly passage level killing formation. The 12 Divine Fiends formation was very famous in the primitive heaven domain because it was jointly created by the 12 ancestral sorcerers. The principle of the formation was extremely complicated. Among all the Grand Ascension formations, the 12 Heavenly Deities killing formation was one of the more famous and powerful killing formations. According to her mother, the 12 Heavenly Deities killing formation was almost lost in the prehistoric heavenly domain. Even if it was not lost, no one in the prehistoric heavenly domain could set up a killing formation of this level. This was because there was not a single divine formation master in the entire Eldritch Heaven realm. Even in the Xian Mi heavenly domain, it was said that there were only a handful of god formation masters of this level. Mai Shu quickly shook her head and stared closely at Zhuowen's movements. She didn't think that Zhuowen could successfully set up the 12 Overseer Heavenly Gods killing array, which was almost lost in the primitive heavenly domain. Zhuowen naturally didn't know what Mai Shu was thinking. He had read about the 12 heavenly deities killing array from the True Pill Array records. In the True Pill Array records array formation section, there was very little information on heaven-piercing grand arrays. The 12 Overseer Divine Fiends grand array was only one of the few heaven-piercing grand arrays in the array formation section. The reason why he chose the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array was because he saw that it was the only heaven-piercing Grand Array. Since he wanted to obtain the Scarlet Moon Stellar Wave Milk, he naturally had to face the green skeleton. It was naturally impossible to use a defensive array to deal with the green skeleton, so he could only use a killing array. 3 days later, the outline of the array formation around Zhuowen was completely clear. With Zhuowen as the center, the area within a radius of 1,000 meters was completely covered by a blood-red boundary. At the edge of the blood-red boundary, there was a blood-red giant standing in each of the 12 directions. Each giant had a different body shape, but they were all filled with terrifying killing intent and powerful aura. It was as if the 12 giants weren't giants, but 12 unshakable mountains. The shadows of the 12 ancestral shamans. It's really the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array. Mai Shu retreated from the blood-red boundary. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock. She had repeatedly doubted that Zhuowen could have set up the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array. However, the scene that appeared in front of her was like a slap to her face. Big Brother Zhuo, he's really amazing. Mai Shu came back to her senses. Her face was flushed, and she looked at Zhuowen with her beautiful eyes full of stars. At this moment, Zhuowen was still in a state of epiphany. His speed of forming hand seals was getting faster and faster. He looked at the True Alchemy Array record with concentration and seriousness. He was a little nervous and excited. He knew that the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array was about to be set up. At this moment, the steps of setting up the array had come to an end. He knew that he had reached the most critical step. Success or failure depended on this. Zhuowen took out the Beast Bone Array disc and began to set up the array foundation. At the same time, he took out piles of supreme-grade Heavenly Law origin crystals from the macro world. After all, the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array was a heaven-piercing Grand Array. Its consumption of Heavenly Law energy was terrifying. When Zhuowen took out enough Heavenly Dao origin crystals, he rapidly formed a seal with both hands, intending to complete the final hand seal. But, after completing the last hand seal, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, which landed on the array foundation of the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array. For a moment, Zhuowen felt that the Grand Array seemed to be alive. That mouthful of blood seemed to have endowed the array with spirituality. Zhuowen stood up. He was standing in the center of the blood-red boundary. 12 giants stood silently at 12 positions at the edge of the barrier, looking down at Zhuowen, who was in the center of the formation. The 12 giants were blood-red, and their faces were blurred. Their real faces could not be seen clearly. However, Zhuowen was able to recognize which ancestral shaman these 12 giants belonged to based on their size. Of course, the 12 ancestral sorcerer were just the shadows of the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array. They were not the real ancestral sorcerer. However, even if they were not the real ancestral sorcerer, Zhuowen knew that the shadows of the 12 ancestral sorcerer had extraordinary battle strength. They all had the battle strength of an early-stage heaven-piercing master. Zhuowen flicked his sleeve, sweeping up the formation base of this grand formation and storing it in his great world. The blood-red boundary and the shadows of the 12 ancestral sorcerer also disappeared. Zhuowen looked down at the mysterious stone in his hand and laughed softly. "Little guy, thank you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have reached the heaven-piercing level in the formation Dao so quickly." The mysterious stone emitted a faint light, and immediately sent a weak divine thought to Zhuowen. The divine thought mainly expressed that this guy still wanted to continue absorbing the emerald stones and wanted to absorb the remaining half of the mineral vein. Zhuowen smiled bitterly and said, "I've already promised them that I'll only take half of the mineral vein. I can't go back on my words. Don't worry, there are other emerald mineral veins in the Slaughter Heaven region. I'll find other mineral veins for you." Chapter 3143. Extracting the Crimson Moonstar Wave Milk. Big Brother Zhuo, thank you. I didn't do anything at all, but you're giving me half of the load. Mai Shu naturally heard Zhuowen's whispers about the mysterious stone and was moved. She walked up to Zhuowen and bowed deeply. "Why are you being so polite? If it weren't for Miss Mai Shu, I wouldn't have been able to find this jade stone load. We've already agreed that we'll split the jade stone load in half." Zhuowen smiled. Mai Shu nodded. She was even more grateful to Zhuowen. "Mai Shu, I'll clear a path for you, then you can leave Death Canyon and meet up with Uncle Jiang and the others. You don't have to wait for me, just return to the Divine City and gather the people there to mine the remaining jade stone load." Zhuowen suddenly looked at Mai Shu with a solemn expression. "Big Brother Zhuo, are you planning to stay and retrieve the Crimson Moonstar Wave Milk?" Mai Shu thought of something and her pretty face changed slightly. She continued, "Although you've arranged the 12 Divine Fiends formation, you also said that the green skeleton in the whirlpool is a very powerful existence. It's at least at the level of a sky-piercing master. Even with the 12 Divine Fiends formation, it's still very dangerous. Why don't you follow me back to the Divine City? I'll ask my mother to come over and help you retrieve the Crimson Moonstar Wave Milk." Zhuowen shook his head and said, "This Crimson Moonstar Wave Milk is very important to me. I must retrieve it as soon as possible. Moreover, the green skeleton is in a deep slumber. It's currently using the energy of the Crimson Moonstar Wave Milk to recover from its injuries. The longer this drags on, the stronger the green skeleton will become. At that time, it'll be more difficult to retrieve the Crimson Moonstar Wave Milk." Mai Shu saw that Zhuowen was insistent and didn't try to persuade him anymore. She only reminded Zhuowen to be careful and not to push himself too hard. Then, Zhuoan led my Shu to the entrance of the tunnel and soon arrived at the entrance of the lode. At this moment, the tunnel leading to the top was filled with countless rock pythons. However, at the end of the passage, Zhuoan had set up a powerful defensive array, blocking all the rock pythons outside the array. At this moment, the flowing light on the surface of the formation had become much dimmer. It was clear that the impact of the rock pythons on the formation was not small. Zhuoan took out the Huyi divine bow again, narked an arrow on the bowstring, and pulled the bowstring into a full moon. The moment Huyi's godly arrow shot out, he undid the defensive formation, and the countless rock pythons in the tunnel fell down with a clatter. However, before these rock pythons could fall to the ground, they were completely pulverized by the terrifying killing intent emitted by Huyi's divine arrow. Whoosh! Huyi's divine arrow shot into the passageway, bursting with killing intent. None of the rock pythons in the tunnel could withstand the power of Huyi's divine arrow, and all of them died without leaving behind a corpse. Let's go. Zhuoan pulled my Shu along as they entered the passageway that was covered in blood and flesh. They walked up the passageway. At the top of the passageway, the king snake was still guarding the cave entrance. It was flustered and exasperated, constantly bombarding the cave entrance. Although it had made the cave entrance much larger, the king snake could not penetrate the cave in a short time and enter the depths of the cave because the soil here was too hard. Rumble. The king snake once again smashed its head against the cave entrance. It was at this moment that Huyi's divine arrow broke through countless rock pythons and shot directly into the king snake's head. The Huyi's divine arrow was incomparably sharp and carried with it a shocking killing intent. It drilled into the king snake's head and ran through its slender body. King Snake screamed miserably as its huge body twitched and twisted. Fresh blood sprayed out from King Snake's wounds without any regard for its life, turning into a rain of blood in the canyon. The other King Snake was not far away, completely unaware of what had happened. It hurried to the injured King Snake's side, wanting to comfort it. Following the sound of something breaking through the air, a blazing greenish-yellow light directly pierced through the second King Snake's vital point. The power of this divine arrow was even more terrifying than the first one. After shooting into the king snake's vital point, it directly exploded. The second king snake did not even struggle before it fell to the ground, lifeless. Zhuoan stood calmly at the cave entrance, holding the Huyi's divine bow in his left hand and maintaining the shooting posture. The moment he arrived at the cave entrance, he shot out the second Huyi's divine arrow and directly killed the second king snake. Kill it while it's down. Zhuoan took a step forward, his whole body emitting a sparkling light. In an instant, he arrived at the king snake's head, which was in great pain. Clenching his right hand into a fist, he punched Wang Shi's head again and again. The terrifying force was like a thunderous drum being struck between heaven and earth, deafening, shaking the heavens and earth as it rumbled. Zhuoan punched with all his might. Every punch carried supreme power, perfectly displaying the power of the Pangu sacred body at the later stage of the six-star realm. Boom! Zhuoan punched the last time, and the king snake's head directly exploded into a ball of blood. The king snake crashed to the ground, and Zhuoan lightly landed on the ground. The death of the king snake frightened many of the surrounding rock pythons, and they did not dare to approach Zhuoan. Instead, they all fled. Let's go. Zhuoan took my Shu to the entrance of the canyon. When they arrived at the nearest defensive array that Zhuoan had set up earlier, Zhuoan bid farewell to my Shu. Brother Zhuo, you must be careful. My Shu looked at Zhuoan's back as he left. She was worried, and she silently prayed for Zhuoan. After Zhuoan returned to the cave, he went straight to the end of the tunnel. He stopped at the entrance of the stone room and looked at the pool of crimson moon stellar milk. He did not enter the stone room, but took out a piece of green stone and threw it into the stone room. A whirlpool appeared on the left side of the crimson moon stellar milk pool and sucked in the green stone. It was at this moment that Zhuoan took out the beast bone array disc and threw it into the whirlpool. The array disc unfolded, and the entire stone room was suddenly enveloped by a blood-red barrier. At the edge of the barrier, the shadows of the 12 ancestors of sorcerers stood in 12 positions, and a powerful pressure poured down. Zhuoan's eyes flickered, and he lifted his right foot and stepped into the stone room. Suddenly, the whirlpool appeared again, and a gust of wind swept over, rolling Zhuowen up. Zhuowen's entire body erupted with the power of the Pangu sacred body, and he forcibly resisted the gust of wind. Then, he walked step by step toward the crimson moon stellar milk pool. Chapter 31:44. Leaving the Death Canyon as the scarlet moon stellar milk in the pool decreased, Zhuowen discovered that the heavenly energy in the stone room was also becoming thinner. After filling nearly 100 jade buckets, Zhuowen discovered that there weren't enough jade buckets in the outside world, but there was still a third of the scarlet moon stellar milk in the pool. Zhuowen didn't care about anything else. He directly used the Devourer King's devouring power to forcibly absorb it into the space of the outside world. He was prepared to let Ghost Plume, Yin Wuxia, and the others in the outside world use jade bottles to fill the scarlet moon stellar milk. Scarlet moon stellar milk was a heaven-level divine medicine. Apart from being preserved in a special environment, it had to be preserved in a jade container. Otherwise, its powerful medicinal properties would be easily lost. The instant Zhuowen absorbed the last of the scarlet moon stellar milk into the outside world, he felt an extremely vast and terrifying aura awaken in the stone room. In an instant, the entire stone room was filled with that terrifying aura. It was like a surging tide that drowned the entire stone room. That terrifying buoyancy made Zhuowen feel suffocated. "How dare you covet this lord's belongings? You're courting death." A voice as loud as a bell resounded throughout the stone room. Shortly after, a human-sized whirlpool appeared on the left side of the pool. A green skeleton walked out of the whirlpool. It was the green skeleton that Zhuowen had seen in the whirlpool space with his divine sense. When he first saw the green skeleton, it was sitting cross-legged, so he didn't have any concept of its height. But now that the green skeleton stood up and appeared in front of him, Zhuowen discovered that although the green skeleton was only a skeleton, it was abnormally tall. It was at least 3 feet tall. Zhuowen stomped his right foot and quickly retreated. "Where do you think you're going?" The green skeleton was flustered and exasperated. Green flames ignited in its hollow skeleton eyes. It stomped on the ground, bursting out with a wild gale. Rumble. However, the moment the green skeleton rushed out, it was blocked by a blood-red barrier. It only then discovered that its surroundings had been set up in advance by someone. 12 Overseers Divine Wraith Formation. When the green skeleton saw the shadows of the 12 ancestral sorcerers surrounding it, it could not help but take a few steps back, looking extremely shocked. At this moment, Zhuowen had already retreated to the door of the stone room and looked at the green skeleton with fear. "Little guy, you better not do anything stupid. This seat paid a great price to find this crimson moon stellar wave milk. You actually dare to take this seat's things? Are you tired of living? If you know what's good for you, you'd better return the crimson moon stellar wave milk to me. I'll pretend that nothing happened and let you leave this place safely." The green skeleton's eyes were burning with a faint green flame. Its voice was slightly anxious as it threatened. Zhuowen looked at the green skeleton coldly and sneered, "If you want it, come and get it yourself. Why do you need me to send it back?" The green skeleton's eyes burst with green flames as it said angrily, "Little brat, you're pissing me off. Do you know the consequences of angering me?" "I don't know and I don't want to know. If you want to take back the crimson moon stellar wave milk, you'll have to break my 12 divine beings killing formation first." Zhuowen sneered and left the stone room without looking back. The green skeleton looked at Zhuowen's back silently and roared angrily. It had already suffered a very serious injury and its strength was less than 10%. It was relying on the crimson moon stellar wave milk to recover from its injuries. But now, Zhuowen had taken away all of the crimson moon stellar wave milk and trapped him in the 12 Overseers divine wraith formation. Of course, it had heard of the 12 divine beings killing formation. It was a sky-reaching level formation. The shadows of the 12 ancestral sorcerers that appeared in the formation all had the strength of an early-stage sky-reaching master. If the green skeleton was at its peak, the 12 divine beings killing formation would not be able to trap it. But now, if it forcibly broke through the 12 divine beings killing formation, it would pay a very heavy price. It was in the formation and did not dare to move at will. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Don't let me see you. Otherwise, I'll tear you into pieces. The green skeleton was flustered and exasperated. It grabbed at the void with its right hand and a vortex reappeared. It re-entered the vortex space. The vortex space was an independent small space attached to the stone room. The 12 divine beings killing formation would not affect this space. In the vortex space, the green skeleton came to a valley where cylindrical jade barrels as tall as a person were placed. These jade barrels were twice as big as the ones Zhuoan had taken out before. In the valley, there were hundreds of such jade barrels. This is the source of the rarest crimson moon stellar wave milk. I've been here for countless years and collected almost all the crimson moon stellar wave milk in this spring. Only the last pool of crimson moon stellar wave milk was left, but it was destroyed by that ant. But it doesn't matter. This crimson moon stellar wave milk should be enough for me to recover by more than half. After I recover, I'll kill that ant. The green skeleton's voice was cold and gloomy. Then, it suddenly waved its right hand, causing over 100 jade buckets in the valley to explode. The crimson moon star wave that contained dense heavenly energy transformed into a long river that surged into the green skeleton's body. After flying out of the cave, Zhuoan came to the Death Canyon. He looked at the pitch-black cave below him and frowned slightly. He felt a trace of uneasiness in his heart. This was because he found that the 12 divine beings killing formation he had set up in the stone room did not show any signs of being triggered. In other words, the green skeleton watched him leave with the crimson moon stellar wave milk and did not show any signs of breaking the formation to chase after him. That green skeleton didn't show any signs of movement. How strange, Zhuoan frowned slightly. He hesitated for a while but did not go back to see what was going on with the green skeleton. He was very confident in the 12 divine beings killing formation. Although the green skeleton was mysterious, its injuries were too severe. It would definitely not be able to break free from the 12 divine beings killing formation. Zhuoan walked along the canyon and moved forward. Along the way, he would occasionally encounter some scattered killing beasts, which were easily dealt with by him. However, as Zhuoan walked along the canyon, he would set up a creation-level formation every once in a while. With his current Heavenly Master Array Dao, setting up a creation-level formation was a piece of cake for him. He did this just in case. Although most of the killing beasts in the Death Canyon were killed, there were still a small number of them left. The jade ore vein was in the deepest part of the canyon. If the God City wanted to mine the ore, they would have to go deep into the canyon. The remaining killing beasts would cause a lot of trouble for the God City cultivators. He set up the formation to solve this problem. It could be considered as my Shu's reward for helping him find the jade ore vein and obtaining the crimson moon stellar wave milk. Chapter 3145. Arriving at Hongxian Divine City, I'm finally out. Zhuoan felt refreshed as he walked out of the Death Canyon. He had gained a lot in the Death Canyon and was in a good mood. Lord Shui, you're finally out. Xiong Fei, who had been waiting at the entrance of the canyon for a long time, hurried over when he saw that Zhuoan had finally come out. He was so excited that tears and snot were running down his face. Zhuoan looked at the excited Xiong Fei and the group of elite beastmen behind him and asked, "Have the people from the Divine City left?" Xiong Fei nodded and said, "Yes, they've been gone for a while. But before Miss Mai Shu left, she asked me to pass this to you. She said that you can enter the Divine City with this token." As he spoke, Xiong Fei passed a white token to Zhuoan. Zhuoan took the white token and immediately recognized it as the Hongxian token that Mai Shu had taken out. Judging from Jiang Yi's attitude at the time, it was obvious that the Hongxian token was a very important item. After all, the Hongxian token was equivalent to an order from the City Lord of the Divine City. Zhuoan didn't expect Mai Shu to leave the Hongxian token to him. It was obvious that Mai Shu valued his entry into the Divine City. Of course, Zhuoan also felt Mai Shu's trust in him. The Hongxian token was very important to Mai Shu. She was willing to give it to him because she trusted him. Got it. Zhuowen put away the Hongshen token and said to Xiong Fei, give me a map of Hongshen Divine City. Xiong Fei didn't dare to delay. He took out a sheepskin scroll from his sleeve and obediently handed it to Zhuowen. Zhuowen took the sheepskin scroll and unfolded it. After studying it for a while, he realized that Hongshen Divine City wasn't far from the Flowing Cloud tribe. Xiong Fei, thank you for this. I'll go to Hongshen Divine City immediately. These heavenly Tao origin crystals are your reward. Zhuowen waved his sleeve and took out thousands of supreme-grade heavenly Tao origin crystals from the outside world. He leaped onto the dragon horse and clamped his legs on the horse's belly. The dragon horse neighed and galloped away. Lord Zhuo, don't you want these jade stones? Xiong Fei looked at the supreme-grade heavenly Tao origin crystals excitedly. However, he soon thought Zhuowen's dragon horse. He recalled the heavenly Tao origin crystals they had collected in the canyon. Zhuo Wen, who was riding on the dragon horse, did not answer Xiong Fei. Instead, he threw out a black stone. The mysterious stone flew over and circled around the place where Xiong Fei had placed the jade stone before returning to Zhuo Wen's side. Xiong Fei and the rest were dumbfounded because the jade stones they had collected had all turned into dust. A day later, Zhuo Wen rode on his dragon horse and stopped at a desert. He raised his head and looked ahead. 1,000 meters ahead, a huge city appeared in Zhuo Wen's line of sight like a crouching dragon. This huge city was built with huge pieces of yellow stones, and the city walls alone were over 1,000 feet high. Around the huge city, dense streams of light flickered. Zhuowen could see that these streams of light were traces of an array. In addition, above the huge city, there was a green array pattern that was large enough to cover the entire city. This array pattern constantly overflowed with a green aura that surged into the huge city. Zhuowen looked at the array pattern and knew that it was a huge array that supplied heavenly Tao energy. Because of the existence of this array, the environment in the huge city was the same as the outside world. It was filled with heavenly Tao energy. The cultivators in the huge city could peacefully cultivate and advance. Zhuowen knew that this huge city was Hongshen Divine City. Zhuowen rode on the dragon horse and continued forward. Soon, they arrived in front of the huge city gate of Hongshen Divine City. This city gate was made entirely of bronze. On the surface of the city gate, there were many complicated patterns engraved on it, making it look mysterious and ancient. Zhuowen looked at the patterns on the surface of the bronze city gate. He knew that these patterns were array patterns. Moreover, they were of a high grade. Once someone attacked the city gate, the array patterns on the surface of the city gate would be activated. At that time, the array patterns would explode with terrifying energy. Zhuowen stopped in front of the city gate. At this moment, the city gate was tightly shut. On top of the city wall above the city gate, 2 guards noticed Zhuowen and immediately shouted, "Who are you?" "I am a friend of Miss Mai Shu and Jiang Yi. I am here today because of their invitation." Zhuowen jumped off the dragon horse and shouted at the guards. The 2 guards looked at each other in confusion. One of them, a tall and thin man, said in a deep voice, "You are a friend of Miss Mai Shu and Lord Jiang Yi? Why didn't they mention you?" Hearing this, Zhuowen's face sank. He thought that after Jiang Yi and Mai Shu returned to the Divine City, they would greet the guards. Now, it seemed that the 2 of them did not greet him at all. It seemed that he could only use the Hongshen token. Zhuowen took out the white token and raised it above his head. "This is the Hongshen token that Miss Mai Shu gave me. She handed it to me personally. Now, do you believe me?" The moment the 2 guards saw the Hongshen token in Zhuowen's hand, their faces changed drastically. They looked at Zhuowen with bewilderment. The 2 guards whispered to each other for a while, glancing at Zhuowen from time to time with strange looks in their eyes. "Wait," the tall and skinny guard said before leaving the city wall. The remaining guard, on the other hand, kept sizing up Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with vigilance and hostility. Zhuowen furrowed his brows. He hadn't heard the whispers of the 2 guards just now. However, after he took out the Hongshen token, the 2 guards' attitudes became unfriendly. Zhuowen had a bad premonition. After a while, the tall and thin guard returned with a young man. This young man was about 10 feet tall and covered in green scales. Zhuowen could tell at a glance that this young man belonged to the dragon clan, just like Jiang Yi. However, this young man's strength was obviously inferior to Jiang Yi's. From the aura he exuded, he was probably only at the early stage of the creator realm. However, this young man should be a junior. His talent was not bad since he could cultivate to the early stage of the creator realm. You said you are a friend of my Shu and Uncle Jiang? The young man stood on the city wall and looked down at Zhuowen with cold and merciless eyes. Chapter 3146. The young man from the dragon tribe. Zhuowen raised his head and looked coldly at the young man from the dragon tribe. The Hongxian token belongs to Miss Mai Shu. Unless she comes out personally and I hand it to her, no one else has the right to make me hand it over. The young man from the dragon tribe stared coldly at Zhuowen and suddenly laughed. Are you still putting on an act in front of me? Mai Shu and Uncle Jiang were ambushed by the people from the Dark Rock Divine City because of you. Otherwise, how could something as precious as the Hongxian token appear in your hands? The young man from the dragon tribe shouted, Men, take down this spy at the city gate. Rumble. The bronze city gate slowly opened and nearly 100 cavalrymen in heavy armor appeared behind the gate. They glared at Zhuowen fiercely. The cavalrymen quickly rushed out and surrounded Zhuowen. Zhuowen frowned as he looked at the cavalrymen around him. He was confused. However, from the words of the young man from the dragon tribe, he knew that Mai Shu and Jiang Yi had not returned to Hongxian Divine City. Instead, they had been captured by the people from the Dark Rock Divine City. It was no wonder that the guards did not know that he had come to Hongxian Divine City. Moreover, he was suspected when he took out the Hongxian token. If I were a spy, do you think I would walk right into your trap and come to Hongxian Divine City, and even stupidly take out the Hongxian token and show it to you? Zhuowen stood calmly on the spot, and his tone was terrifyingly calm. The cavalrymen surrounding Zhuowen looked at each other. They had obviously thought of the same thing and were hesitant about whether they should make a move. The young man from the dragon tribe sneered. He took a step forward and jumped off the city wall. The powerful impact caused the ground to tremble slightly. You happen to be planning to use such a trick to confuse us and make us suspicious. Unfortunately, this little trick of yours is completely useless against me. What are you waiting for? Take down this spy. The young man from the dragon clan ordered the cavalry in front of him coldly. The young man from the dragon race had a high status in the Hongxian Divine City, and the 100 or so cavalrymen did not dare to disobey him. The long spears in their hands flew towards Zhuowen. However, these cavalrymen knew when to stop. They did not aim for Zhuowen's vital points. Instead, they aimed for Zhuowen's limbs. Clearly, they intended to cripple Zhuowen and capture him alive. Ding ding ding. What happened next shocked all the cavalrymen surrounding Zhuowen. Their spears had indeed pierced into Zhuowen's limbs, but the moment their spear tips touched the surface of Zhuowen's body, they produced a clear clanging of metal. Their spears were actually unable to harm this person's body. How is that possible? How can this person's physical body be so terrifying? Our weapons are completely useless against him. All the cavalrymen were shocked. They couldn't help but retreat. Unfortunately, Zhuowen would not give them any chance to retreat. Zhuowen grabbed all the long spears that were aimed at him with both hands. Then, he exerted force with both hands. A terrifying force exploded, and all the long spears that were caught by him exploded into countless wood shavings. The cavalrymen screamed in pain as they were sent flying. The young man from the dragon clan watched as the countless cavalrymen were sent flying. The figure standing in the middle was like a demon god, standing tall and firm. Then, the young man from the dragon clan realized that the figure had turned around and was looking at him coldly. That pair of eyes was filled with killing intent and brutality. It made his scalp tingle. You've got guts. How dare you touch the cavalrymen of the Hongxian Divine City? Are you tired of living? The young man from the dragon clan said in a frightened voice as he slowly retreated. I am indeed tired of living. However, it's not that I'm tired of living. I'm tired of waiting for a piece of trash like you to get your ass in front of me and kowtow. Zhuowen's voice was calm, but terrifying killing intent exploded from his body. He slowly stepped out with his right foot and walked toward the young man from the dragon clan. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? You're just an eternal overlord trash. How dare you threaten me to get my ass in front of you and kowtow? You're daydreaming. The young man from the dragon clan was enraged. He was a top genius of the younger generation in the Hongxian Divine City, but now he was being looked down upon by an eternal overlord trash. Given his pride, how could he swallow this insult? Boom. The young man from the dragon clan no longer retreated. Instead, he took a step forward and fully unleashed the aura of an early-stage creator. Terrifying gusts of wind swept out around the young man from the dragon clan, causing his hair to flutter in the absence of wind. He looked elegant and dashing. The young man from the dragon clan flashed and flew toward Zhuowen. His right hand clenched into a fist and punched out, creating a muffled explosion. Bang! The young man from the dragon clan punched Zhuowen in the chest and laughed maniacally. An eternal overlord is indeed an eternal overlord. In front of me, the creator, you're just trash and a joke. But soon, the young man from the dragon clan realized that something was wrong. Zhuowen was still standing in front of him and hadn't been sent flying by the force of his punch. He was as immovable as a mountain. So this is your full-strength attack. It's as soft as a woman's. Zhuowen looked indifferently at the young man from the dragon clan, a cold smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The young man from the dragon clan's pupils shrank to the size of needles. His legs felt weak. That was indeed his full-strength attack. His full-strength attack should have been enough to blast this person to smithereens, but in reality, this person was standing in the same spot without moving an inch. His body was as hard as steel, and there wasn't even a scratch on his chest. How is this possible? The young man from the dragon clan couldn't be any more shocked. He unconsciously retreated. Unfortunately, the moment he retreated, a vicious slap landed on his cheek. The terrifying strength of the slap caused the dragon youth's face to swell up. He spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with broken teeth as he fell to the ground. Then, Zhuowen stomped on the young man's head, causing his face to sink into the mud. The surrounding cavalrymen got up one after another. They had planned to charge at Zhuowen again, but when they saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded. The young man from the dragon clan had always been a powerful existence in their hearts. Apart from the experts of the older generation, he was almost invincible. But now, the young man from the dragon clan was actually stomped on by this young man. This was too unbelievable. Did I say you should retreat? Zhuowen's calm and terrifying voice sounded. To the young man from the dragon clan, this voice was like the voice of a messenger from hell. It was so terrifying that it made his heart palpitate. Now kneel in front of me and apologize for your rudeness. Chapter 31:47. Great Guardian Ying Jie humiliation flashed across the dragon tribe youth's eyes as he growled, "Do you know who I am? Do you know where you are? This is Hongxian Divine City. How dare you behave so atrociously and act so impudently in front of me? Did I ask you to spout nonsense?" Zhuowen pressed the tip of his right foot against the dragon tribe youth's abdomen and lifted him up. He then lifted his right foot and kicked the dragon tribe youth's body. Instantly, the dragon tribe youth coughed out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. He was hit so hard that he saw stars and vomited blood. It was as if he was about to vomit out his internal organs. "Do you think that I won't dare to kill you because this is Hongxian Divine City?" The killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes grew increasingly intense, as if it had materialized. The dragon tribe youth was truly frightened when he felt the killing intent. His body trembled and his lips trembled. He finally experienced the ruthlessness of this young man, especially the terrifying killing intent. He did not doubt that if he did not do as this young man said, he would really be killed by this young man. "I know I was wrong." The dragon tribe youth hurriedly got up and knelt on the ground. He kowtowed to Zhuowen as his knees trembled. "What's going on?" Just as the dragon tribe youth was kneeling in front of Zhuowen and apologizing, a middle-aged man walked out of the city gates. Behind the middle-aged man were thousands of cavalrymen. The middle-aged man had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He looked like a human, but upon closer inspection, the middle-aged man's hair was snow-white and there were 8 grayish-white foxtails behind him. The moment he saw the middle-aged man, Zhuowen knew that he was from the nine-tailed fox tribe. Moreover, he was from the nine-tailed fox tribe that had 8 tails. My Shu had told him about the nine-tailed fox tribe before. It was said that the strength of this tribe was reflected by the number of tails they had. The nine-tailed fox tribe was the strongest and stood at the top of the nine-tailed fox tribe. Since this man had 8 tails, his strength must be terrifying. Great Guardian Ying Jie. The dragon tribe youth turned around. The moment he saw the middle-aged man, he was overjoyed and wanted to get up. Unfortunately, the moment he stood up, Zhuowen raised his right foot and stomped on the young man's face, crushing him under his foot. "Did I allow you to get up?" Zhuowen's cold voice slowly sounded. Everyone was shocked. Even the middle-aged man was dumbfounded. Wasn't this young man a little too arrogant? Great Guardian Ying Jie was right in front of him, yet he had mercilessly stepped on the young man's face. Wasn't this a slap in the face? The Dragon Clan youth twisted his body in humiliation. His heart was filled with shock and anger. Ying Jie's position in Hongxian Divine City was second only to the City Lord. He was even higher than the Vice City Lord, Jiang Yi. Moreover, his strength was second only to the City Lord in the Divine City. Among the countless tribes in the Hongxian Divine City, he was well known. In the Dragon Tribe youth's opinion, this person should restrain himself after hearing the title of Great Guardian Ying Jie. However, not only did Great Guardian Ying Jie not restrain himself, Great Guardian Ying Jie stepped on him even more viciously than before. Wasn't he afraid of Great Guardian Ying Jie? Great Guardian Ying Jie's face turned ugly. He looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, "Sir, are you here to cause trouble in Hongxian Divine City?" "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to look for Miss Mai Shu and Uncle Jiang. I'm here to bring a great opportunity to Hongxian Divine City." Unfortunately, the so-called genius of Hongxian Divine City didn't take it seriously and even treated me as a spy. Zhuowen stepped on the Dragon Tribe youth's head with a little more force. The Dragon Tribe youth grimaced in pain and couldn't help but beg for mercy. What a boastful tone. Bringing a great opportunity to Hongxian Divine City. What a joke. Also, Miss Mai Shu and Jiang Yi were captured by Dark Rock Divine City. What's your motive for coming here to look for them? Great Guardian Ying Jie said coldly. Zhuowen frowned slightly and said, "Is Dark Rock Divine City one of the 3 divine cities of the Slaughter Heaven region? Why did they capture Miss Mai Shu and Uncle Jiang?" Great Guardian Ying Jie looked at Zhuowen strangely. "Is there a mistake? Is this guy from the Slaughter Heaven region? How can he not know about Dark Rock Divine City? I order you to release Hao Rui immediately. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless." Great Guardian Ying Jie's voice was terrifyingly low. A terrifying aura burst out from his body. Zhuowen's eyelids twitched. Great Guardian Ying Jie was indeed powerful. He was stronger than Jiang Yi and should be at the peak of the half-step Tongtian realm. He was probably not far from breaking through to the Tongtian realm. This guy was rude to me first and hasn't apologized sincerely. How can I let him go? Zhuowen's voice contained an unquestionable meaning, and his tone was very cold. Then you're courting death. Great Guardian Ying Jie was furious. He took a step forward and rushed toward Zhuowen. The thousands of cavalrymen behind Great Guardian Ying Jie stood quietly in place. They were confident in Great Guardian Ying Jie's strength. They knew that as long as Great Guardian Ying Jie attacked, the young man in front of them would be defeated without a doubt. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with endless fighting spirit. Ever since his Pangu sacred body had advanced to the late 6th star, he had never truly fought with a half-step Tongtian realm lord like Great Guardian Ying Jie. In the previous few battles, he had used Hu Yi's divine arrow to finish off his opponents in order to end the battle quickly. Good. Zhuowen kicked the young man from the Dragon Clan away. Sparkling light burst out from his body, making Zhuowen look like he was made of glass. Boom. In just an instant, Zhuo Wen and the great protector Ying Jie clashed head-on with each other. A terrifying explosive sound, like a profound thunder descending from the 9 heavens, exploded on the spot. The terrifying force was like an exploding sea of clouds. It suddenly whistled and swept up a terrifying storm. The cavalrymen around them were swept away by the terrifying aftermath. They were all shocked. Thump, thump, thump. Zhuo Wen let out a muffled groan and retreated continuously. He retreated nearly 100 steps, leaving behind deep footprints along the way. Great Guardian Ying Jie was also retreating. He retreated 70 or 80 steps until he reached the edge of the city gate. Then, he steadied himself. Great Guardian Ying Jie looked at Zhuo Wen in shock. He couldn't imagine how this guy in front of him, who was only an eternal overlord, could have such terrifying strength. The cavalrymen behind the city gate were equally shocked, as well as the young man from the dragon clan who had been kicked around by Zhuo Wen and was wailing in agony. Only now did he truly understand the terrifying strength of this unfamiliar young man. He could actually fight with Great Guardian Ying Jie. Was this guy really an eternal overlord? Chapter 3148. The woman in white. After Zhuo Wen stabilized himself, he narrowed his eyes and looked at Ying Jie in front of him. He had a general understanding of his own strength. His Pangu sacred body was at the late stage of 6 stars, which was equivalent to a half-step Tongtian master. Of course, if he relied on his sacred body's terrifying recovery ability, he would be able to fight an early-stage Tongtian master without dying. Again, Zhuo Wen let out a long howl and took a step forward. His entire body flickered with sparkling and translucent light, and he looked like a man-made glass divine statue. Ying Jie was shocked and angry. Although he was shocked by Zhuo Wen's strength, he also knew that this person's strength was weaker than his own. Your strength has really shocked me, but you will never be my match. In the end, you will only be trampled under my feet. Ying Jie sneered. His body exploded with terrifying energy ripples as he flew toward Zhuo Wen. Boom, boom, boom. The two of them fought in an instant. Terrifying shockwaves spread out in all directions like water ripples. The cavalry in front of the city gate had already retreated to the safe zone inside the city gate. The Dragon Clan youth was so scared that he retreated. His eyes were full of fear as he looked at the two people fighting in the sky. He really wanted to slap himself. If he had known that this person's strength was so terrifying, he would never have provoked such an existence. He even suspected that this person was a spy from Dark Rock Divine City. With such strength, he was at least one of the few higher-ups in the Divine City. How could he have the leisure to be a mere spy? Boom. Just as the Dragon Clan youth was letting his imagination run wild, a figure fell to the ground in a sorry state, creating a huge crater. Then, he saw Zhuo Wen climb out of the crater in a sorry state. He let out a sigh of relief. This person's strength was indeed terrifying, but he was still no match for Ying Jie. The Dragon Tribe youth originally thought that Zhuo Wen would definitely surrender after being suppressed by Great Guardian Ying Jie. However, he did not expect that this fellow was actually not afraid of death. He once again rushed out and engaged in a fierce battle with Great Guardian Ying Jie in midair. As the battle continued, the Dragon youth discovered that Great Guardian Ying Jie seemed to be at a disadvantage. At this moment, Great Guardian Ying Jie's face became more and more solemn and unsightly. He looked at Zhuo Wen in front of him with bewilderment. Following the continuous battle, his consumption also became greater and greater. If he was in the Divine City, he could recover in time with the supply of heavenly energy. However, there was no heavenly energy outside the city gates. Every time he attacked, he would use up a lot of heavenly energy. Furthermore, he was unable to replenish enough heavenly energy, so the more he fought, the weaker he became. On the other hand, the young man in front of him didn't know what fatigue was, and he maintained his strongest battle prowess at all times. Didn't this guy need to consume the energy of the heavenly Tao to fight? Boom. At the instant Grand Guardian Ying Jie was distracted, Zhuo Wen seized this opportunity and arrived before Grand Guardian Ying Jie like a bolt of lightning. He raised his right hand and fiercely slapped Grand Guardian Ying Jie's face. Smack. The crisp sound of a slap rang out. Immediately, the cavalrymen of the divine city were stunned to find that great guardian Ying-Jie, who was almost invincible in their hearts, had been slapped to the ground by the young man in midair. Moreover, he was in a head-down position. Great guardian Ying-Jie's eyes were filled with humiliation. The moment he fell to the ground, he immediately got up. However, he did not get up to fight with Zhuowen again. Instead, he planned to retreat. Zhuowen clearly saw through great guardian Ying-Jie's intention. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out a golden rope from the great world and threw it out. This golden rope was a peak creation level binding divine weapon. Zhuowen had obtained it from an enemy he had defeated in the past. In the past, he rarely used this binding divine weapon, so he rarely used it. Now, it just so happened that it came in handy. The rope caught up to great guardian Ying-Jie at lightning speed and tied him up. The great protector Ying-Jie had exhausted too much of his heavenly way energy. The reason he had fled was naturally because he wanted to enter the divine city to recover his heavenly way energy as soon as possible. Unfortunately, Zhuowen wouldn't give him the chance. After being bound by the rope, great guardian Ying-Jie fell to the ground and wriggled continuously, trying to break free. Unfortunately, it was all to no avail. Zhuowen came to great guardian Ying-Jie's side and lifted him up. "You are clearly an eternal overlord. How can you be so strong? Also, don't you use up heavenly energy in battle?" Great guardian Ying-Jie's face darkened, panic flashing through his eyes. Zhuowen inwardly praised great guardian Ying-Jie's calmness. As expected of someone with a high position in the divine city. "You don't need to know about this. You only need to know that I came to Hongxian Divine City with no ill intentions. It was you who attacked me time and time again. I was only defending myself." Zhuowen's voice was low. His battle with great guardian Ying-Jie was more exhausting than the latter. It was just that he had a great world. Moreover, he could open it freely. When he was fighting with great guardian Ying-Jie, he was also constantly absorbing the heavenly Tao origin crystals in the great world. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to defeat an expert like great guardian Ying-Jie so easily by relying on himself. "How dare you? Why haven't you released great guardian Ying-Jie yet?" The Dragon Clan youth shouted at Zhuowen. Zhuowen could not be bothered with that Dragon Clan youth. Instead, he looked above the city wall and said indifferently, "You've been watching there for so long. Aren't you tired?" Zhuowen's words immediately alerted everyone present. They all subconsciously raised their heads to look at the city wall. They saw a slim and graceful figure standing on the city wall. It was a woman around 30 years old. Her skin was smooth and her face was like a peach blossom. She was dressed in a white veil and looked like a fairy in a painting. She stood aloof from the world and floated like an immortal. This woman's appearance was definitely a rare beauty. In particular, her otherworldly temperament gave people the illusion that she was a true fairy. What caught Zhuowen's attention the most was not the woman's stunning appearance but the 9 white, fluffy tails that extended from her back. Without a doubt, this woman was from the nine-tailed fox clan. Moreover, in Hongxian Divine City, only the City Lord of Hongxian Divine City could possess 9 tails. City Lord. The Dragon Clan youth immediately knelt on one knee. His eyes were filled with devotion and fanaticism. The thousands of cavalrymen in the city gate also knelt down and called out the City Lord's name. Great Guardian Ying Jie struggled continuously but was firmly held in Zhuowen's hand. He could only look at the beautiful woman helplessly. The woman in white did not speak. Her jade-like feet tapped lightly in the void and she slowly descended from the city gate. However, the moment the woman in white landed in mid-air, Zhuowen's expression changed. The woman in white instantly disappeared on the spot. Then, she brushed past him like a soul. Chapter 3149. Hongxian Token. Zhuowen stared at the white-robed lady who landed not far away. In that instant, he only saw a flash in front of his eyes. He did not even see the white-robed lady's figure clearly before Ying Jie, who was in his hand, was snatched away by the white-robed lady. Soul ambush. Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he guessed the move that the white-robed lady had used. Speaking of which, Mai Shu had used this move in the Death Canyon before. It had almost teleported into the Purple River where Zhuowen was. It had left a deep impression on Zhuowen back then. After that, when Zhuowen and Mai Shu entered the depths of the Death Canyon, they had discussed this move. It was then that he knew that this move was called Soul Ambush. It was said that this Soul Ambush was the innate ability of the nine-tailed fox clan. Moreover, the number of times the Soul Ambush could be used was closely related to the number of tails one had. Mai Shu only had 3 tails, so she could only use Soul Ambush 3 times. The white-robed lady in front of him had also used Soul Ambush, but her technique and power were much more superior than Mai Shu's. In that instant, Zhuowen could not even catch a glimpse of the white-robed lady's figure. "Thank you, City Lord." The rope on Ying Jie's body fell off and he quickly bowed to express his gratitude to the white-robed lady. The white-robed lady looked at Ying Jie indifferently and said, "Ying Jie, do you know where you went wrong?" The white-robed lady's voice was crisp and clear like the chirping of an oriole. It was pleasing to the ear but also slightly cold. Ying Jie hurriedly knelt on the ground. His face was filled with fear, but there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. Obviously, he was puzzled by the white-robed lady's words. The white-robed lady did not say anything else. Instead, she looked at Zhuowen and said, "Little brother, do you have my Hongxian token? I gave it to my daughter, Mai Shu. Without her permission, it is impossible for anyone else to obtain it. I believe that you have no ill intentions in coming to Hongxian Divine City. However, to prove your innocence, can you show me the Hongxian token?" Zhuowen nodded and handed the Hongxian token to the white-clothed woman without the slightest hesitation. The Hongxian token might be a good thing for those who wanted to take control of the Hongxian Divine City. They could use the token to obtain the authority of the City Lord 3 times. However, Zhuowen wasn't interested in this at all. His main objective in coming to Hongxian God City was to obtain the exact location of the Forbidden Zone that would allow him to leave the Slaughter Heaven region. The woman in white took a deep look at Zhuowen. She never thought that the Hongxian token, which others could only dream of, would be given to her by this young man just like that. His magnanimity was truly extraordinary. From Zhuowen's performance, she was certain that this person had nothing to do with Mai Shu and Jiang Yi's abduction. Suddenly, the countless patterns on the surface of the bronze door lit up, but they soon dimmed completely. Then, the complicated patterns collapsed with a loud bang. The God of Creation stage defensive formation on the bronze gate was instantly broken by Zhuowen. The woman in white looked at Zhuowen in shock. She was starting to believe that Zhuowen could really be a divine master of heaven level. After all, one had to be at least at the creation level to be able to break a divine master of heaven level in an instant. Even if the young man in front of her was not a divine master of heaven level, he was at least at the creation level. There was no divine master of heaven level in Hongxian City. This was because the highest level divine master of heaven level in Hongxian City was only a divine master of heaven level. Immortal Master, I was rude just now. I did not discipline my subordinates well and allowed them to offend you. The woman in white cupped her fists and bowed to Zhuowen. The young man from the dragon tribe and great guardian Yingjie were also stunned. However, the two of them knew the severity of the situation. They quickly apologized to Zhuowen. Immortal Master, we were wrong. We should not have wronged you for no reason. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, since it was a misunderstanding, let's forget about it. Zhuowen knew that the woman in white had bowed to him and apologized to him because she valued his status as a divine master of heaven level. In the Slaughter Heaven territory, array formations were very important to a huge building like a divine city. Zhuowen was the one and only divine master of heaven level. He should be respected by everyone, including the city lord. Chapter 3150. Forbidden Area. In the tallest building in Hongxian Divine City, in a spacious meeting room, the white-robed lady sat at the head of the table. Zhuowen sat beside her. Great Guardian Yingjie and the young man from the dragon race sat on the other side. However, from their positions, it could be seen that Great Guardian Yingjie and the young man from the dragon race had a much lower status than Zhuowen. After proving his Dao validation level, Zhuowen received everyone's recognition. His status had risen to second only to the white-robed lady. After a round of introductions, Zhuowen finally found out that the white-robed lady's name was Mai Ying. She was Mai Shu's birth mother and also the person in charge of Hongxian Divine City. The middle-aged man was the great guardian of Hongxian Divine City. His name was Yingjie. As for the young man from the dragon race, he was the most talented genius among the younger generation in Hongxian Divine City. His name was Hao Rui. City Lord Mai Ying, Mai Shu and Uncle Jiang can be considered as old friends at first sight. They left Death Canyon before me. How could they have been ambushed and kidnapped by the people from Dark Rock Divine City? Zhuowen found it unbelievable. Death Canyon wasn't too far away from Hongxian Divine City. If Mai Shu and the others were really ambushed, they would have sent out a signal. If Hongxian Divine City had sent out reinforcements immediately, they would have been able to make it in time to save Mai Shu and the others. Mai Ying saw Zhuowen's doubts and said, Dark Rock Divine City has been planning this for a long time. Moreover, the Dark Rock Divine City sent out the Shadow Troop, a troop that specializes in speed. By the time we arrived, the Shadow Troop had already disappeared. The only clue is this letter that the Shadow Troop left for me. Mai Ying took out a letter and passed it to Zhuowen. Zhuowen didn't stand on ceremony. He took out the letter and started reading it. The letter was personally written by the City Lord of Dark Rock Divine City, Shumu. The general idea was that they had kidnapped Mai Shu and Jiang Yi. If Hongxian God City wanted to redeem the two of them, they would have to prepare 1,000,000 emerald stones and personally deliver it to Dark Rock Divine City. Mai Ying said worriedly, our Hongxian Divine City is weaker than Dark Rock Divine City in the first place. Moreover, we don't have 1,000,000 jade stones in our Divine City. We won't be able to take out so many jade stones in such a short time. Furthermore, that Shumu also requested that we deliver it to Dark Rock Divine City within 10 days. Time is really too tight. City Lord, how many days is it from here to Dark Rock Divine City? Zhuowen suddenly asked. If we hurry, we can reach Dark Rock Divine City in about 4 days, Mai Ying said. There's enough time. City Lord, I've told you about the jasper or vein in Death Valley. As long as you can excavate the ore vein, you will have 1,000,000 jade stones. When the time comes, you can send them to Dark Rock Divine City. Zhuowen's gaze was calm. 1,000,000 jadestone or vein might seem like a lot, but as long as Hongxian God City gathered all the tribes to excavate the ore vein, they would be able to excavate the ore vein in 2 to 3 days. Mai Ying looked at Zhuowen with bright eyes and asked, is Immortal Master Zhuo speaking the truth? There's no need for me to lie to you. Moreover, I've already said that the discovery of the jasper or vein was due to Miss Mai Shu's efforts. I believe City Lord knows her abilities better than I do. She was the one who found the ore vein, Zhuowen said indifferently. Mai Ying no longer doubted that Zhuowen was right. Mai Shu was her daughter. She naturally knew that Mai Shu had the special ability to sense the jasper or vein. There's no time to lose. I'll make some preparations and go with you to Death Valley to confirm it. Also, Ying Jie, help me gather all the tribes near Death Valley. Call as many as you can and quickly excavate the ore vein, Ma Ying said. Great Guardian Ying Jie hesitated and said, the jasper ore vein is a secret between the divine cities. City Lord, if we gather all the tribes, won't we be revealing the ore vein to the public? Look at the situation now. Who cares if it's a secret between the divine cities? We must excavate the ore vein as soon as possible. Otherwise, Mai Shu and Jiang Yi may die in Dark Rock City, Mai Ying said with a gloomy face. Great Guardian Ying Jie quickly nodded in agreement and left the meeting room in a hurry. He must have gone to arrange the manpower. The Dragon Tribe youth, Hao Rui, laughed dryly. He didn't dare to stay for long and left with Great Guardian Ying Jie. Soon, only Zhuowen and Mai Ying were left in the meeting room. Zhuowen coughed dryly and said to Mai Ying with a smile, City Lord Mai Ying, I heard that there's a forbidden zone in the Massacre Heavenly Domain. The location of this forbidden zone is very mysterious. Only the City Lord knows the location of this place. I wonder if City Lord knows the location of this forbidden zone? Mai Ying turned his head and looked at Zhuowen from head to toe. His eyes were solemn as he said, You want to break into the forbidden zone and leave the Massacre Heavenly Domain? Zhuowen scratched his head and said, I do have such a plan. I just entered the Massacre Heavenly Domain not long ago and I just want to leave as soon as possible. There are still many important things that I need to do in the outside world. I can't stay in the Massacre Heavenly Domain for too long. Mai Ying shook his head and said, I advise you to give up on this idea. The Forbidden Zone is a taboo in the Massacre Heavenly Domain. Basically, no one who enters it survives. All of them have died in there. Didn't the Massacre Heavenly Domain's City Lord, Zi Wei, break out of the Forbidden Zone? It seems that the Forbidden Zone isn't a complete dead end, Zhuowen said calmly. Mai Ying smiled bitterly and said, City Lord Zi Wei is a freak and also a demon. I don't find it strange that he could get out, but you? I'm afraid it will be difficult. Let me tell you the truth. The 3 city lords of the Massacre Heavenly Domain didn't dare to break into the Forbidden Zone. It's not that we don't dare to try. It's just that we have tried in the past. We all narrowly escaped from the Forbidden Zone and survived. We deeply understand how terrifying the Forbidden Zone is. Zhuowen's eyes were calm as he said, City Lord Mai Ying, I came to Hongxian Divine City for only one purpose, and that is to obtain the exact location of the Forbidden Zone. No matter what you say, I must break into the Forbidden Zone. Mai Ying stared blankly at Zhuowen. He shook his head and said, There's no harm in telling you the location of the Forbidden Zone. However, you must first bring me to the Death Valley and find the jade or vein. Only then will we break into the Forbidden Zone. When the time comes, I will give you the map of the Forbidden Zone. Don't worry, Miss Mai Shu and Uncle Jiang are my friends. Since they are in trouble, I will not sit idly by. I will go to the Forbidden Zone after I rescue them. Zhuowen said calmly. Then I will thank you on behalf of Mai Shu. Mai Ying smiled at Zhuowen. Time is of the essence. Let's go to the Death Valley. Zhuowen said, You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.